Thanks for coming to the Hauraki Scheme Committee meeting today. We'll get on with it. We've got the Roger Harris Award, so we have some the recipients of the scholarship turning up later, and John Harris, the son of Roger, is turning up at about 10:30 to sit in the meeting and then be here for the give the award out to the two recipients. So you want to do the kitty here, please? Yep.
Good everyone, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whakataka ke hau ke te uri. Haka ke hau tona. Ia mā kena kena ke uja. Ia mā wharatara ke tai. Ke he ake atakura. Ke tō. Hauhi ke he hau.
Thank you all. Is everyone's been here to a health and safety, or do you want us to go back over that today? It was required. Been here previously for it. Well, okay, all good. Thank you. Apologies, though, I'll do some of those. Connell Buchanan and Phil Sherwood, John Trent, and Phil Buck has been injured in an accident, so he's able to attend today as well. So might actually pay because Phil isn't standing next to him, so might actually be worthwhile, Dave, to send. Hope Phil gets well soon, and his hard work that he's put into this committee and his community for the last how many years has he been a councillor? So yeah, it'd be nice for us to send something along to Phil for his efforts for the last 9 years. So yeah, he's been a very valuable contributing to this committee and many others over his 9 years. So I think yeah, you can do that as well, Dave. That would be great. Any others? Apologies.
Good. It's
yeah, no, all good. Right, confirm the agenda.
seconder.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Yeah, second.
yeah. All in favour? Yeah. Okay. Gary.
Yeah.
It's annoying not having a democracy next to city.
Capital's not.
I said it, you normally got your democracy person sitting next to you in a meeting when he's sitting like.
Yeah, I've been short because of the cable. Just one thing before we confirm the agenda, the table of contents is incorrect. But all of the contents of the agenda is, for some reason, it's just those of the table of contents legislation.
Okay.
So I've noted that in the resolution.
Okay. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for the agenda?
Over.
And Peter. Peter, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Actually, I'm not, I'm ex-officio, so I can't contribute this, so.
Aye.
It has to be councillor.
Thank you, Ben, for clarifying that. All in favour? Against? Carried. Through that. Any disclosures of interest? Any different than any? But no, move on with that. What's now out?
Minutes.
Oh, minutes. Oh, second. A mover and a second for that, please.
Yeah, I'll make it.
Colin. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Moving into Chairman, moving into item 6.1, schemes of effectiveness. David, you just.
I can speak. I'll keep this very brief. At the last meeting of the subcommittee, there was some discussion about feedback for the committee. There's some concerns about, to put it in tactful terms, the aging membership, and just to try and think about what committee's objectives are, how the committee functions and stuff. So to that end, we've prepared a short paper and we've come up with some, what I would call standard questions to canvass you for your feedback. Rather than doing it here and spending all morning on it, at the end of this meeting, I'm happy to circulate those questions via email, and you can feel free to reply to that email, send them to me in confidence. We won't share them wider. I'll collate the responses and share the collated responses so that nobody will know who said what. And that will help the incoming council, should they so wish, to make any changes or change the function of the committee to suit the needs. There are a number of things to consider, of course. Things like venues, meeting times, and so it's an open-ended questionnaire that will come. So I do encourage you to respond, because it's obviously that feedback that does play a big part in determining how we move forward in the next training. And I'm happy to leave it there and you can open it up if you've got any questions.
Mr. Chair, it looks to me we don't have much of the agenda today. It seems to me these were significant questions and might be useful in this here and asked about, even if it does come out, because this is more significant for future than anything else we're covering today. That's correct.
There's the land purchase there to be.
Yeah. Maybe we come back to this at the end. We've got time now.
Yeah, I don't think it'll hurt to have a 5-minute discussion if there's members want to think about it.
I think it's useful to read out the questions and
Yeah.
get feedback.
Happy to do that if that's the part you want to buy.
Yep.
So what I'll do is I'll read out the questions one at a time, and we'll, rather than me trying to take notes to page, in the meeting, and I'll just collate the feedback in. I will still circulate the questions post-meeting, so if there is anything you want to say, sort of not in the open discussion, feel free, right? So to that end, the first question is, how well do the current scheme subcommittees support the functions of integrated catchment management in terms of both effectiveness and efficiency?
On page 14 of your agenda.
Yeah.
Does that mean should we have them or not?
Not necessarily. I mean,
If we didn't have them before and they're set up again, I mean, is this a question of if they want to continue?
I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I don't give that answer, because obviously that's up to the 14 incoming councillors post-election. But obviously, speaking pragmatically, I'll put my democracy hat on here for buttons on the fence as well. Speaking pragmatically, there are pros and cons to a formal committee, right? So the pros to the formal committee is the ability to resolve. There's a quite formal feedback line where the minutes report back to catchment and recommendations can be made that way. The publication of agendas with clear information. Obviously, some, and I'm going to lean on some of the feedback I've had from the scheme subcommittee here. Some of the feedback is actually as a result of the formality of the committees. So, for example, if you wanted to have a committee meeting at the golf club over a beer on a Friday night, it's very difficult for us to achieve because of the nature of the formality of it. We have to record the meeting, take 30 minutes, and so on. And likewise, we're pretty much hamstrung by our legislation that the 5 items on the agenda of what must be discussed. We can't sort of arrive and say, and now we're going to open the floor and talk about whatever, because the legislation pretty firm that people reading the agenda must be able to understand what is discussed at the meeting. And it gives anyone else an opportunity to come to the public meeting, right? So that's the kind of the pros and cons to the formality. Likewise, if I look at this here and say that it's an advisory group, the formality goes away, but then so too does that ability to resolve. So on that note, then there's a reliance on the convener of those groups to report back to catchment or wherever to make sure that your comments and feedback are noted effectively. So I'm not going to say that any one is better than the other, they're just different ways of doing things.
Through the chair. So through the chair, so your first question says, how well do the current scheme committee support the functions of ICM? But if there's two subcommittees, I'm presuming this question will go to both committees, because how many of us sit on both committees? How can we answer that particular question? As how do the current scheme committees?
That's right.
So we need to be precise on talking about this one in particular, or if we all sit on both of them corresponding.
That's right. So the feedback I've collected from the other group. That's probably worth noting at this point, while we have two formal subcommittees, that there are, and we'll have a better recollection of the numbers on this, we do have a number of other catchments that don't have them and have other mechanisms. They haven't been sort of canvassed in terms of these questionnaires.
They are going to be in the future though, by what Chris is saying, how he wants to, the old CEO wants to manage catchments in the future.
And you're possibly a step ahead of me in that discussion, so I'm not sure I haven't been privy to that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. So we're probably not going to have a lot of time, obviously, today to go through each question, but what we did for Waikato Subcommittee is that we did, Noel introduced some of what you just did, David, and opened up to a little bit of the floor, but then you emailed out after that committee.
Yeah, no, I'll do that too.
With those questions, and we'll run, so there'll be an opportunity for members to still go through and think, because it's really important. And, we're not going to, but if there's any initial comments today, we're happy to do that, but there's 5 questions here that we are tabling. You might have some initial, but yeah, just from a, I guess from a process perspective, it might be an opportunity for feedback.
My, we can run through the questions quickly, but there's Peter and Connell that have been on these committees for long term and understand what the old committees were and how functionality these ones are today. I think you guys working as a group together and reporting back would be most probably a wealth of knowledge to help with than just the new members that are on the committee for the first time. I think that would be helpful. So I'd hope Peter and Connell, you most probably not to work as a group, but maybe Connell can work with like Brian and Roger Hunter and that, and you could work with some of the guys up this end and put your different perspectives of input into it might help.
What's the outcome? What are we looking for?
They're trying to inform us how they would like their committee to be in the future.
You mean the Rockwood side?
Yeah, I actually want to stay out of the discussion. I want them to give the discussion of what they would like to, and not what I perceive as the.
Well, like Peter and Con, we've been around a little while, and I don't really, this is me being upfront, Peter might sound wrong. I still don't see a lot of things that we started way back a couple of years ago. We're still debating. Probably, I come here because it's about the repairs and whatever. But we're still actually, I don't believe that we'll actually tick the right boxes these guys are on the table for. So I don't even know if your questions are relevant, to be honest. That's only my perspective. I'm not saying, I don't give a Peter. But, how relevant are your questions when we've been in the subcommittee now? This is my 3rd term. And we're asking questions that we asked back in the first term kind of thing.
I think the most relevant question is number 5. That's my point of view.
Please feel free to add. You will
So
do
number-
that. We'll be doing that in
So number 5 opens the door for you to say anything you like.
Yeah.
Much.
Does Peter have any comments? Because the council should keep quiet, I guess so, but.
Not today, no.
No.
But I think what Karakia says is quite important. I mean, we go around in circles.
Mm.
But I think as a committee, we actually make some suggestions, but I think they don't go very far up the ladder. And maybe it's too much bureaucracy, so maybe you guys, the committee, the hierarchy, you need to look at some of the bureaucracy you have and make it more simple. Because you don't need to have all these mumble jumble rules and regulations, quite what you need. I mean, recently we just bought a farm and we made a 1-page contract. It's not 50 pages of contract. Keep it simple, stupid, going forward. I think you mumble jumble it with your lawyers and the department.
So if I'm Keith Holmes. I was the chair of Lower Waikato Zone
Yes.
Flood Protection Committee. And to me, in terms of, I absolutely hear what you're saying at the moment. And it frustrated the hell out of me, Patriana, in terms of this. The moment Regional Council took the voting rights from the chairs of Waikato and Waikato, Piaka, Waihau away, they denuded and just stuffed the whole process. So the decision really has to be, are you game enough to allow the bottom up to come through? Or it's sat on from the top? And I think that's what you're alluding to there, Peter.
Well,
And I think the council has to be prepared to allow the intelligence of the bottom up to come up through and have voting rights on ICM.
Well, it's more the fact that institutional knowledge is with people like me, whereas the council keeps losing people in the council. What's the average people that stay at 3 years? Well, where's the knowledge? They lose it. They don't build on history. And history changes, but you need to know where you've come from.
I think the council understands that point after what happened in the Hawke's Bay. That is definitely, it's in every report that institutional knowledge is the most important thing. Well, then actually, Kenny worked on that down there. He went down there and worked, didn't you? Yeah, Hawke's Bay report. Yeah. So this council,
There's knowledge within this cache.
yeah.
At least with people.
Like the Hauraki District on the branch for the Western Hauraki, we've got, we've been talking about our people, we've got like 25, 30 years worth of knowledge we often room. So we get add really there. The other thing is probably just limited last week, the feel was just too strong on the self road, we are starting to make a look. We were actually representing and pushing through the permitted activities first consented process there. It's a long term on there. With that grid there, so there are things starting to happen a little bit out of these
We were talking about this 20 years ago.
What I wanted to raise is the first term councillor getting to council, finding these committees didn't exist, they'd all been disbanded. And it took us 6 months to a year to get them set up again. I see this as a question of, is this committee useful at all? Has it fulfilled its purpose? And then how do you make it better? Because previously there wasn't one.
Been around for a while, and you're right, the last term it got diminished through. I would say who or where or whatever, and we did take a while to get together. But in saying all of that, I still don't believe that what we decide in these councils do actually elevate to the council itself. Because I'm one of the ones in the council where you guys can't change minutes that we determine down here. You know, so I guess what we want to do today is find the relevance. No, the relevance is there. We know what the relevance are, the people who've been around the paper for ages. What we want, from my perspective, is that the council understands our relevance and how to help us escalate. That's what any
test location.
Otherwise, we're just a bunch of
There's overland flood path.
talking a whole lot of stuff, having a cup of tea and go home and nothing happens. So, Dave, and chair, are the questions relevant enough for us to see a future? That's what we need to know. Is these questions relevant enough for this table to comment on to see the future? Because you're right, some of us may not be back next year. Then we start again. Then these poor guys who've been here forever have to do what a whole lot of new things if they like to start. Thank goodness for our staff. So that's why I asked, what's the outcome? What is the council wanting out of this outcome? When we finish the questionnaire and stuff.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is it the council or is it the rate partners? Because what we're talking about is the effective rate partners here, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, like I said, you have to find about, like Ben said, this rock we got closed down. We've evaluated it again and brought it back. We wanted to keep going. Obviously, there are good tick boxes that can come. We're obviously also looking to find the relevance of how do we ensure that the council going into the future doesn't dismiss us all over again. You know, so our questions and answers has to help regional council see the relevance of why these committees are important, but it's also going to be important to front page.
Now you've got a question.
Yeah, look, thanks for that. For me, 6 years ago, the council staff director in particular reported to council at the start and got rid of the council subcommittees, ICM subcommittees. We fought hard, as Ben has said, to get them back. There was resistance from those councillors who were around the table 6 years ago at the beginning of the triennium and fought hard. Some fought very hard not to get these committees up and running. We managed to achieve limited success because the terms of reference current terms of reference were constrained by some of the thoughts of those councillors around the table. We need to look at what serves the community, our targeted ratepayers. So I've probably heard and probably talking too much myself already, because our need is to hear from the landowners, the targeted ratepayers, what they want to meet their needs. Now, Robbie knows and others around the table know that in the Lower Waikato, a couple of days a week, Robbie and I are out and about in that community with drainage and rivers. It's just a tremendous amount of work over there. And Robbie probably doesn't have the same workload over here, but he may correct me. The reality is the ratepayers who take up a third of the income from council on this targeted scheme, 140 odd staff, we need to hear what the ratepayer wants. What service are they getting the service? So we've got to break the formality down, but I really want to hear from what you guys want, not what we want and not what we did and what we didn't do. What is going to serve the needs of the targeted ratepayers? And that's a simple question. Question 5, as Dave Doggett has already alluded to, forget all the other ones. It opens the door. You tell us what you want. Thanks, Robbie.
It's not.
I wonder if it was not the staff who closed down these catchment committees.
Pardon?
It was not the staff who closed these catchment committees. They were advised through the councillors at the time. The fight wasn't.
The staff recommended to council, Claire Cricket signed the report that to get rid of the, so staff recommended to council and council acted on that recommendation.
That's exactly right. The councillors.
Thank you.
Bobby, I just wanted to add 2 things to that is, one, these meetings are every 6 months, March, so time. And the second question is, I think Keith's raised, should the terms of reference be altered so that the committee can actually have an impact on ICM rather than just being a nullity in terms of it makes reports, doesn't make recommendations. So we've got other committees, co-governance committees that make recommendations, or so these are less impactful, but probably pay a whole lot more rates. So,
I can help clarify that. So I'm not going to look at the tools I'm going to explain this, but the committee, the scheme subcommittees can make recommendations to the catchment committee. formal recommendations by way of resolution. In a similar vein, being to what the committees can do for council.
Okay.
So the subcommittee does have that power.
As long as it stays within the tours of the.
Yeah, and
The
so
problem is,
a good rule of thumb here is that if you start operating outside of your terms of reference, anything you resolve would have to become a recommendation.
yeah,
Or it would be considered that it's ultra virus, you take the power to do it, would be discarded.
and
So
that's where we got in a bit of trouble in this term where we made, we put up a, recommendation that, ICM should have its own,
Strategic plan.
strategic plan and its own,
Vision.
and me and Noel had to soften that because otherwise we'd gone completely out of our terms of reference. So it was a bit of work in progress to soften that could still go, but the mechanism that we used, the mechanism that the committee used it in was the wrong one. So we've got to be careful, and then we had a few councillors going, how come this recommendation is coming through? And we went, well, so yeah, we've got to be really careful.
Change the term of reference.
That's right.
Because innovation starts from the bottom. That's where you get the ideas
Yes,
going.
and that totally agree.
So you guys at the top are insulated. You don't see what goes on really.
Yeah,
Noel might, you might, but
yeah, but you guys need to, that's what you need to have some good input into that question 5 of what you really want.
yeah.
And that's the most important bit.
And it's probably worth being aware that while the terms of reference set out the scope of what the subcommittee can do, there is also a level of constraint, for the want of a better word, in the agenda process. So, for example, if you want to make a recommendation to catchment, that item has to be on the agenda somewhere. We can't just pluck a recommendation out from nowhere. And that is a constraint actually of the legislative local government act in terms of the formality of the meeting. So, and that's where we get back to this loop where then you need a report that comes through for you to consider to make that recommendation. And of course, it takes time and costs money, right? So we're quite aware of that procedural, for the want of a better phrase, hang up. We all
happy with it? Yeah. Let's move on to the next order. I think we've had a good discussion. You can come back to Dave at the end of the meeting and view some points and hopefully go away and give him a constructive email of what you'd like to put forward in the future.
You got a time frame for that?
it would be good. We're at the end of the training zooming up on it, so it would be good if we could get those back in the next week or so.
Right, does it require a formal motion from this meeting?
No,
Just to receive the report.
just to receive the report. Okay. But I hope you reach out to the members that aren't here. I'll talk to Conway and Phil, and you'll be sending them out all the members out an email.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. And I'll contact some of them we're here today to make sure they put something in. Thank you. Sweeter, mover and a second.
I'm
Peter and Neil, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item.
Thank you. The next item is 6.2, issues and actions. 15 to 17 on your agenda. We will take the report as read. You'll see the updated commentary pages here. Unless Karen, anything you wish to highlight from the report, otherwise taking questions, clarification. So the main items there, just to recap, is the nomination of scheme subcommittee members to work with science policy and information. And it's also just discussion around the structuring of the calendars, meetings, and commentary there around the plantation forest rules, which was raised by one of the members in noting yes, the NDS for commercial forestry review is still underway, the discussions with those constituents to July, so any recommendations that come back at each meeting. Yeah.
Is it appropriate that Brian gives a quick report on his work with the working group?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Chair, we had a meeting last week over at the office. We were, just caught on myself and John did this committee, plus Trevor Hamilton, and Waikato. The whole idea was to present a challenge, reasonable permitted activities, why we have to have permitted activities, why we're getting permitted activities been overridden and being put with consents, being pushed or put in place instead of permitted activities. We presented our case to Greg and one of the guys from Rudd, Bruce and Brent. And we had got David from policymakers. So we got our understanding. We were in make sure we represented and be on the table when as the keep continually putting pressure on. But previously we're putting the pressure on. But just asking the right questions to make sure that why we having to pay extra consent when we've got permitted activities. Policy already done, which does do a lot of the things that are needed. The main thing we wanted to discuss is permitted activities, why we needed to get consent for a like pump or a modified or a man-made drain. So this is what we were. It's both on our western Hauraki Plains and on the western side with the Waikato streams and drainage there. So I think we had a lot of pre-work videos, a couple of days of getting our questions all ready for that day, and we got a good case. Just keep battling on. Thank you.
Just to add to that, I think the most valuable part of forming that group is they've been put now as a stakeholder group when the new fresh when we proceed with our new long-term plan, that there'll be a working group working with those three directorates to try and make everything, or make things as easy as possible to do work within the ICM space. And I think Greg and Brent and Bruce definitely enjoyed the conversation. It was a little bit robust at times, but it was all good. And it was respectful, and I think that working group, stakeholder group, will be helpful in the future. That when we get to that point of actually putting your landowner point of view, and the one good thing that came out of that was that
today got referred that the WRC staff member's not available.
Get feed or something. But these guys are targeted ratepayers that pay especially drainage rates that aren't, there is no, 20% from the region. They pay targeted rates to protect roads and assets and infrastructure that with a consent, they're actually paying for the consents then to protect all that infrastructure. And I think that's the really good point that came out of that discussion the other day, that this should be done in the most permissive way because they are also paying to protect all of those vital infrastructures that exist outside your farm gate. So I think that point was taken on really well, wasn't it, Greg? And I hope you guys in the future can keep working in that space. I think that's the most productive place you can be. So thank you for your hard work.
Especially roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which.
Well, RUD isn't the issue. RUD, it's actually policy, because RUD can only work with the rules that's in front of them. So if we want to change anything, we have to change policy, and RUD will work with those rules. So, on it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Robbie, just one of the difficulties, if I can, that came out of it was that there's already a perception amongst staff and others that the rules are already fairly permissive. So we've got to get that message that we're seeking greater permissive activities than what's perceived against a backdrop of the likes of Fish and Game, who will fight us every inch of the way like they did with the comprehensive consent for the drains. So it's not all roses. But I think the fact that the landowners have empowered themselves and formed this group is a very powerful situation to now be in.
We're going to swap and chop between Karen and I today.
So can you have a mover, please? Yeah. On myself. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 6.3, flood protection and land drainage work program, Hauraki zone, page 18. I'm just going to provide a few introductory comments and I'll hand over to the opening up here on the right hand side to work through the elements of the report. But first, I just want to introduce the team. So many of you will know already, but just to make sure that those that don't. So Karen, acting zone manager for Hauraki, and she'll pretty much lead the, I guess, for the main parts of the presentation, around flood protection aspects of management. Sarah Muir, next to her is our council land officer. So welcome Sarah. So Sarah will present an element of the two, some of the council land aspects. And many of you will know Ruben, who's our land drainage manager, who also covers the the Waikato Central Red Belt. And of course, Kenny, you will know our Hauraki operations team lead. So we've got a good team here. Clarification areas. So yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. It's really exciting, really, to bring this report to you, and I want to acknowledge the work that's gone in behind the work program for the last year, 24-25 years. So this summarises the end of year result up to the end of June. It's been a pretty big year, and you'll see that the amount of work that's been completed by the team has been awesome. I also just want to acknowledge the support and contribution from the Select Committee as well. The partnerships that we have with even people outside this room, our stakeholders, our landowners, David Ratepayer, district councils, you name it. There's so many I could mention that was leaving them out. But it really does take a partnership to achieve what is it? It's a big program for the Hauraki zone. So just wanted to acknowledge that the steps of the Select Committee. So Karen, I think we've got some slides to raise and dazzle the committee this morning, so we'll work through and we're happy to take questions along the way. Otherwise, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chairman, councillors and members. Adam's covered off the first couple of bullet points here on this first slide. The third one is an apology from me. We actually missed a recommendation to be written into this report at the beginning. So some of the discussion today will be about the fact that we have a project moving a stop bank on the Piako River on the true right from Ngatea to Paparoa. And some of that project requires that stop bank to be moved away from the berm of the river, and that means we need to have a conversation about purchasing some land. So that's what the recommendation is about, asking, for you to support that process. So let's go through slides. Okay, so Piako operational program for the year. Successful year from my perspective, hopefully from yours as well. Mainly due to the fact that we had a reasonably settled fine year. Looking back the last few summers, it's been quite a difficult time to achieve work. And with no major flood events in this last financial year, we've actually been able to progress our BAU standard work. Examples of that is the structural audit program was completed. We input into modelling works for the Hauraki. We've got that 2D modelling focusing on our asset rationalisation stage 2 project to work with us more closely on our projects going forward. We've input into the regional and coastal plan reviews at various stages during the year. We completed a large program of annual condition inspections. We've had a large list of works completed, and we'll talk about that a wee bit more shortly. But in reality, there's been more than 2,800 of those completed in the Hauraki. River works, blockages, fallen tree removal, erosion, sediment management, all of that has been ongoing. We've got some great photos on that shortly. And we've completed a funding policy development for the Whakaua coast. That's been a major requirement for the year. So we now have that area of land formerly in the Waikato Regional Council's rating policy to undertake catchment and river works going forward. So that's some of the major highlights without getting into the detail. But one piece of improvement that I wanted to show the committee today, and I think it's on page 22 of your agenda, is an image. But it's been the ability for us to utilise the new financial tool. It's not just a financial asset management tool that we have. Actually see information that's not just words and numbers. So we have the ability to look at and quantify our operational team's program of work, the stuff that's coming at them to do, all those, so the stuff that they've finished, and actually be able to allocate that resource more fairly and equitably across the multiple teams. So here's an example that comes straight out of that tool. So it shows us at the bottom in the big boxes, that's individual teams. Shows us in colour where they are with certain aspects of our work program. So we can run through the awaiting planning, the awaiting the start dates. We've done the planning, ready to run on that piece of work. We've done the in progress, so the project's underway, the piece of work's underway. We've also got work completed. So different colours relate to that. So what it does for Kenny in particular, it allows us to right size the teams over time. It also helps us to understand, or from my perspective in particular, to understand should we move out of that BAU into a flood response space? What is it that's in front of us that we're now having to park and do the flood response? What do we need to come back to at a later date? Helps us just understand things that we've been doing historically, but we haven't been able to, at our fingers, understand what we need. Another example is, if you like, sort of like, this tells us over the months in this last financial year the type of work that was undertaken by the teams. So we've got on the left there, we've got total work orders completed per month. You can see December was a major month and a significant amount of condition inspections have been undertaken. And then on the right is a portion of those annual condition inspections and when did they happen. And the again, we've got in the bottom there completed works for capital, operational, planned, and importantly for me is the difference between our planned program and what have we had to come in and react to. There's something new has come along, something's changed. And it could be something as simple as we've gone to site, we fixed the problem that we've had, but while we were there, we found something else. So that's a reactive piece of work that's added to our program for the year. So, and just for information, this was staff who did this. Wasn't a consultant, someone we brought in, some staff knew and were told actually it would be down a bit for us. Yeah, from my perspective, it was a huge improvement. Okay, so what I like the most about the new tool is that we've got pictures rather than numbers and tables and information like this. But at the moment, we still got our financial information that we wish to supply to the committee. So this is the Waihau Zone's operational program for the year. We spent $9 million on, excuse me, all of our activities. from oversight through to river management, flood protection, of which we funded $10 million, so we had a surplus that went into reserve. The 111% of our program was completed, and which literally meant we've spent a little bit more on some of our operational activities, but that was because of the major push that we were undertaking in that asset condition inspection space. Yeah, I think the agenda pages 19 and 20 show that all of this information by zone. If you've got any particular questions. Piako zone had a $9 million spend for the year and a $7.5 million budget. The difference being that we had some major capital write-offs undertaken here associated with the fact that we had a lot of work done, and the formal financial process to changing the capital project from capital spend to an operational is that you write off that cost. But that was specifically in this case related to our asset management project, where we undertook a lot of work that wasn't capital items. So it's things like putting in culverts and culverts and information for the Hauraki District Council, assets in the drainage space, but that money was funded through the Ministry for Business, so offset with cash from the Ministry in their shovel-ready program. So it's a financial moving of the numbers from one place to the other. And so what you see in the funded portion of the table here is a government grant of more than $1 million to help offset costs. So it's, yeah, it's a spend that we had to do, but this is the financial outcome of what it meant.
So that's part of the Deluge 1 funding.
This was the original shovel-ready.
Oh, shovel-ready. Oh,
Yeah.
so
we only completed that at the very beginning of this financial year that we just completed. So unfortunately, it's fallen into these financials eliminated.
Would you say if we came out ahead, thanks to government funds that we managed to secure?
We definitely did. Each program, each opportunity that we get is definitely better for the ratepayer in the long run. At the moment, I'm not sure about the future, but at the moment, the Ministry looks to fund between 55 and 65% of the project. So we can undertake the standard BAU work required and add on something that's significant to the project. And we're still winning because that add-on plus some of the other project is all funded by the Ministry's cash, not their ratepayer cash.
So is that all shovel-ready projects are finished now?
The vessel in the lower
We're outside.
yes. Yes, so, but we have, and I'll speak to them shortly on the capital part of the report. We have tranche 1 projects being undertaken at the moment. So we're still working.
Tranche 2 hasn't been decided if we're getting it either.
I know, we're still waiting on that. It's supposed to be last week, I think, but no, it didn't arrive.
Sorry, should chair. So Karen, is there two different budgets between the Waiho Valley scheme and the Piako River?
Yes.
I see. So the reserve.
Totally separate, totally separate.
Okay.
The only time they mix is when
Yes.
we talk in a catchment space, we talk about the whole of the catchment. In that instance, the Waiho Piako become one. But in the flood protection, river management, we have a separate beneficiaries.
And that makes good sense. So when you come to talking about the catchment and then the funding becomes amalgamated,
Yes.
how do you determine the payment to either?
The money goes.
Do you have a percentage basis?
We build a budget associated with where the work will be done. One's Piako, one's Waiho, to double together becomes the catchment discussion.
Question on the budget, see flood protection, both groups, Piako, everyone got $1 million and two of it for just flood protection costs. We did split that, but where's that money going?
So most of it is associated with the fact that we've got government grant funds to offset the increase in spend in flood protection.
We spent money somewhere later.
Yeah.
Extra.
Yes, absolutely. It's mainly in the transfer of what we had as capital costs into the operating, which is what you see in the flood protection line. It's just the operating costs of flood protection. So it's contracted services and staff time, additional staff time than what we originally had as a budget, which is not a huge amount if it comes to the amount of work we achieve. Happy to discuss in detail later if you like. Okay, so some.
Oh, so Karen, just on the total budgets here for both areas, that there was a decision made not to graze the foreshore stocklands. So they're now mowing harvest
Silence, yeah.
for silage hay. I have some concerns about that. For example, it got mowed in the wet part of June, and the bales got removed yesterday. So that's all heavy traffic on our stocklands and our berms that we, from my opinion, we shouldn't be having through that period. If staff are not allowed to drive along the top of the stockbank because it could damage the stockbank, why are we letting contractors into? It just seems like there's been an open slab and the contractors come and go when they feel like it. And then I drive around the district and I see stockpiles of rotten hay and really stuffed silage bales all over the place that have to be used. Is it cost effective or is it not? I don't know. I'm just asking a question. So how much in those budgets has we incurred since this decision was made that we're not getting a benefit from?
Well, I would suggest that probably that's a topic we can bring back to the next committee meeting if there's one to be had around the program of work that has the change between grazing licence revenue and silaging revenue. I can tell you though, for the last year, all of the silaging that was undertaken in the early parts of the year was used on either the foreshore or the asset rationalisation project. So the material was delivered to those projects and used. The May cut, can any of you get any thoughts on the May cut?
I'll have to look into that because they would need to be on the bank. So, but
we have got definitive times when they should or should not be there.
It's just got really, and it was just stopped raining, they cut it in 3 days later, and failed it. And then at the end of on the road, there's about 20 or 30 bales that are completely rotted away because they've just sat there. And I mean, it's only a bit behind here.
That's some of that. So, in terms of the benefit, like, it will be good to see the numbers in a report next time because I believe it saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars on those projects. So, and even the old hay still gets reused as erosion protection because they throw that over the soil and that. So, I know in the early days we did lose some in the flood because we got salt water through it, so it sat there too long. It is a program works that's growing because we're getting so much off that land now. It's turning into almost a business, and that was over and above what we used to do because we used to be a farmer. So it's another, I suppose, burden on staff to manage. But it's got a huge benefit to it, and that'll be in that report around, stopping other feed coming in from other areas. There's when the scheme's having the issues, been able to offset that farmers with the use of that hay, and we can control what we need when we need it, kind of thing. And it was also driven by the fact that foreshore stockbacks were in a priority stock exclusion area, and it was a requirement of DOC and Heritage for Council to have the stock off there, so we had to manage it some way. So there was really no choice but by it. But I said, yeah, it'll be good to see the numbers and the stats and the benefits and that all on paper, because I think we'll stack up.
Yeah, like that side I sort of can understand, because I just really struggle with the timing of it when our banks have. It's just like the cycle fail getting metal in the middle of winter. We have had 2 summers to do it. It's just the timing is not good for our asset.
One thing that's been lost is the protection of the scheme almost. So there's us doing that work and there's staff doing work in there. None of it should have been in that time, especially when it's closed for that period beforehand. Things work from time to time, that's how we manage that, I suppose, but I will follow up on that.
Thank you. Okay, river management or river works. We have some photographs from here on some of those activities. So existing rock armouring at the Tafita, river did its job through Cyclone Gabriel, but was damaged. So our staff went back in and restacked the riprap and added more length where it had been damaged outside of the original amount of riprap. If you're not aware of where the site is, it's actually quite a sharp horseshoe bend. So the water is inclined to try and jump out of the stream on the river at that point. There's one that was done. We also had the Waihau at Tiaraha. There's a major tree down below the river there, so that was resolved. Hauraki Stream, we had old man pines in the river, reinstated the bank, seeded and hay mulched the berm and reinstated the fence lines. So that's just a small sample of the amount of river management work that goes on. So what we talked about previously was our operational program. So we also have a separate capital program of work that's created on an annual basis. We have a long-term vision on what our capital program looks like. And in the last year, we had a number of projects. Agenda page 23 has a lot of the detail on it, on our program there. I just wanted to be clear that we have a budget for capital renewals, and that includes our work program for the year for existing assets. So we renew the existing assets, but in some very limited cases, we need money for what's classed as capital new work, so the creation of new assets. An example of that is to do with the recommendation that was missing from the planning report. So the Ngāti Te Paparoa True Right Bank project, where the berm stop bank works. When the stop bank has been moved or upgraded, will be standard capital renewal because it's already an asset that's there. But what we're looking at is the purchase of some land, so that would be capital new works. So the two budgets are separate, but they're there for very specific purposes. What I can say overall, whether it be in the Waihau or the Piako, the program for both zones was highly successful, and in my opinion, directly attributable to the capital portfolio governance roles that we have in place, and the capital program manager role that's new. Was a role that was undertaken through the shovel-ready program and moved into our capital BAU program. Strong program manager skills, enabling staff to get on and do the doing. The program manager manages all the interactions needed during those particular project phases. So this is in particular for the Waihau. So at the end of the year, the Waihau, we spent 4.48 million on capital. Of what 4.69 on capital, of which 4.48 was our budget, so it's 105% spent. Our major project for the Waihau was the upgrade of the Karakia stop banks. All of that work was completed. We have two smaller tasks associated with the project, where we have asbestos that was found on the site, yet to be resolved and removed. And we have an access track to be installed. Finer weather, better days for that work. One of the other examples of major piece of the work was the Stocks pump station switchboard and controls upgrade. And we have started a Cox floodgate investigation and looking at replacing that this coming year. So it's major works that we're undertaking there. On Piako, we spent 3.9 million of the 3.9 million budget, 98% spent. The major projects was the completion of the asset rationalisation, which was 862 at the end of the year. Total budget was 8.5 million. Foreshore stop bank was totally completed. I'm pretty sure you're all aware that that was a major piece of work for 4 summers due to the weather we had, but it's totally complete now. Reservoir canal, pump station, switchboard and control, a tiny pump, which was automated piece of work, and apple tree marshals and reserve catchment. We're looking at an I&D program there. That's what we're kind of rationalisation number 2. So we're looking at that catchment and undertaking that work. And then we have the last project there, which has got a major piece of green on it, which is telling us that we didn't spend the entire budget on that. We're working our way through the phases for geotech survey work and planning into design for that project. That project is the only one that's there that is in our tranche 1 funding for the ministry. So we're awaiting, tranche 2, awaiting the outcome of that before we continue that project on. I'll talk to them in more detail. I've got some slides on that at the moment. Any questions on that at the moment before we go into some detail on that project?
So the rationalisation of apple tree and marshals is a project, because apple tree is only a pump aid, there's no floodgate there, so you're talking about
and reserve. Okay. Marshals and reserve are
a floodgate at the other end of the catchment or something.
and apple trees in the middle. That
So that's quite complicated to get that to work as one.
so a resilience team inside council is undertaking the major hydraulic modelling upgrades to a 2D model. We have used that catchment for them to do the detail modelling to test their system out on, because we want the outcome of that to help that project. So it's it's the next step. That's what we do. No decisions are made, we gather information.
I think the primary focus on that one is how can we best serve the catchment, like gravity drainage versus the pump. Yeah, does initial results are showing that you can get better and longer duration of output from the marshals end into the output, because the wake blue now so flashy comes up, so the type of expression that comes through really quick. So the plug goes forward, so you don't get as much discharge as you can at the other end. So we're just working on how they interconnect and make that function.
Because those floodgates you're talking about mostly lowering or increasing the capacity of them.
Maybe an increase in the capacity down at the Yako end, but the current ones are very, very low. We'll be coming out by 1.5 meters, 5 meters on them to make them
more functional, that they're not getting silted up. Because Marshall's pumps directly out into the Firth down a slurry drain, silt track.
So we're looking, if there's a change, it would be that Marshall's moves location to pump out straight into the road.
Yeah.
Get a better hydraulic head behind it. So that's, more on that will come.
Yeah, no, it'd be just interesting how you make that all work, because it's quite unique how that all works down the bottom there.
Agreed. Now the recommendation that we are looking for from the committee around this project, which is the Piapu River Ngāti Paparoa right stopping, is the support to undertake the next step, which is to purchase the land associated with this. Now we're only talking about 5.8 hectares of land, which is long, slim strips where we need to move the stopping back from the river and allow our future proofing of access tracks, etc. I've got some some images in a moment. It's affecting only 5 landowners, so 5 parcels of land. The stop bank, the project is being undertaken at the moment because there's historical challenges there with the berm, the location of the stop bank, the erosion of the berm and the stabilities, and the fact that the stop bank needs an upgrade anyway, so we have some height condition challenges, so we need to do an upgrade. So the most important thing is step away, do the right job, which was including the mitigation on any stability challenges by moving the stop bank away. Next one. So here's the location in red. So we have Ngatea at the bottom and Paparoa at the top. There's the area of the entire project that we're looking at. And here's, oops, hopefully it's flick on. Here's an example of the drawings that have been done to date, which shows in red some of the boundaries and where we would be looking to move the stop bank further out. In this sort of location, we're moving into private land. So that's an example. We're not talking about a lot of land, but when we are talking about land, it's, 20 metres, maybe for 400 metres, that sort of thing. So it's doing the right thing at the right time is the way I think of this project. So what I'm asking the committee, if they agree, is to support that. Our preference as a scheme is to own the land that our assets sit on. Therefore, if we have to move the bank 20 metres and that 20 metre encroaches into private land, then your preference is that we own that land. So we would then go into negotiations with the landowners. What I can tell you to date is that we have had conversations with the affected landowners to give them a heads up what we're doing while we're out there doing the survey and geotech information. They're all favourable. It's not a challenge. We do have one property that is under Maori tenure. That's fine. We work with the processes there that are required. And our process would be to initiate this with a legal letter to the landowners initially with the right to occupy that land so that we can undertake the construction works or whatever needs to happen in construction space. And then we go through the formal process of purchasing the land as required. So no pressure on either party, just accepting the fact that that will come along in appropriate time. There is an appendices on the report today, appendices 1, I think it is, that covers off this in more detail if you haven't had a chance to read it yet. I can take questions or
Will some of those floodgates have to be extended?
Yes, sorry, so a couple of the challenges and benefits are here. Mr. Starr actually started the first one of this project back in 2018 when he moved slaughterhouse, which is above the Ngatea Bridge, back out to create space. We're looking at all the assets in these at the moment. We're not looking at replacing assets for the sake of replacing assets, so we keep them going to end of life. But some of the floodgates are the pipe work's too short to achieve the batters and everything we need. So we're going to have to build like little timber wall on top to buy us another 10 years until it comes up for renewal or whatever it is. And then when it comes up for renewal, we'll go through the whole I&D because we still look preferred at wall gates and things like that rather than the traditional through-bank pipe gates. So for this one here, because it's already been moved, some of the impact of needing to do this is we've created space, but the river's naturally migrating that way, mostly because of we've done the stability works on the true left all the way down here, so we've created a hard edge and it's forcing the water down the road the other side. But we have factored into the land acquisition. It's got enough space, enough to be able to rise the stop bank half a metre in the future. So we've allowed that space. We've allowed a track on the inside for the maintenance of the drains for the District Council and that to be able to do their functions. And on the really sharp corners on outside bends, opposite to the one you see, which is the inside, where it's going to migrate further. We know we're going to get more erosion. We've allowed an extra like 3 metres on that, so we're not coming back asking again and in another 5 years to have to change it. So we've tried to take a pragmatic but not overboard approach to what is reasonable to be required to be able to protect that bank.
Mr. Chairman, through you, how long will the land acquisition last for? As in, it's being set back to provide an allowance for erosion, how long will it take to erode that allowance way?
Well, part of the project also includes not just the stop bank move and upgrade, but also the management of the berms. So we're looking at a design solution for the management of the berms, because it's significantly where the berm is getting saturated with the tide once or twice a day, depending on the level of the tide. We want to stop that happening, which then supports the fact that that section of berm will not erode in the manner that it is now. So that's part of the overall project as well. So should the ministry, this is one of the projects they've supported in principle, should they support it fully? At the moment, we've applied to them for $7 million to support this project. So it's going to cost us more than that, but ultimately it's doing the right thing at the right time.
Well, thank you through you, Mr. Chairman. We've sort of had a brief discussion with this through the Eastern Drainage Committee as well as part of the area. And one of the landowners has indicated that or suggested there's obviously some high level drains that come through here near the Nadia in this area. And whether that's sort of part of the other you might want to comment. There's just some discussion around whether that's part of this project or not.
Yeah, so we are looking at that as part of the project, so, but not the stop bank ones. The stop bank ones primarily because that stop bank technically is unstable as we stand today. So the original scheme design parameters of requiring a 15-metre berm on the Karakia, which is what the gives you the banner of the stop bank down to the bed. We haven't got that along any of this area, and we've got bad piping and issues down the bottom of this, which is where the stop bank's at risk currently. So the primary part of this project is look after the stop banks. On the back of that, we're also looking at all the Johnson's floodgates and the outlet floodgates that are along here for when they come up for end of life. So when they come up, when the Johnson internal and high level come up, we're looking at that as a total catchment to see if those banks are even required or if it's better joined in that. But that those assets aren't at end of life yet. I think they're like another 3 to 5 years away before the first one is. So that project will roll straight off the back of this. Those two catchments have been joined for as long as I've been here due to those pipes being broken, and there hasn't been an issue from that. So we're just modelling to find out why. Those pipes have now been fixed by Hauraki, but now there is some issues on the loading because it hasn't got access. Sorry, the high level hasn't got access for the pump anymore. So we're just making sure we're doing a full catchment review of that and trying to come back to the landowners with what the best options are there. Personally, I believe it's one, should be one catchment because it was functioning perfectly well when the pipes are broken, but fix it's not. So
yeah, so the Johnson's catchment, gates and pump station is a separate project for us, but where any of them meet or join with this project, then there will be decisions made as to what needs to be done.
We're working with HDC and the landowner about that because if those stop banks aren't required along the high level, if it is one catchment, that could be a source of material for this upgrade as well. So we need to benefit out of that if we can get it.
You talked about processes. You get a license to occupy, then you build it, and then you buy it. Is that right?
We'll get the license to occupy and then we will continue that land acquisition process. Depending on timing, it might be that works have been done or it might be that works haven't been done yet. Just depending on the speed and time of the acquisition process, because there's negotiation involved in there. But there's also a phased approach for the stop bank upgrade.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to do this in one summer. Yeah, there's methodology requirements.
The landowner who suddenly decides their land is escalated 10 times in value.
There are legal steps and the Public Works Act that we can follow.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the landowners today have been really good. They understand.
Well, they're protecting their land.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks. Yeah.
It's a livelihood decision. Yeah.
On the Piako, that's probably the most at-risk place of the bank disappearing.
Just a question, is it going to be targeted rates or just generates because really the water starts to start at Eureka? Just make sure he understands how far the water comes through to pass an idea.
Well, it's a tidal bank, so it's the tidal flood protection that we're, level of service that we're undertaking in this area. But when we actually, Greg has a presentation shortly to add on to this around depreciation, so how this is funded. So it's all funded the same, doesn't matter what we're protecting. Whether it's tidal or river flooding, it's all the same again.
For my sake.
And can I just add into that? Did I understand correctly that this is contingent on some ministry funding?
The timing is definitely contingent on ministry funding. If we don't receive that, then we will phase the project to meet our own budget. If the ministry money comes in, it comes in with conditions, of course. Some of that is timelined. Then we would speed the project up to meet that.
So you consider large projects looking really long. Does Paul Wolf fit in the old Paul's Wolf flow there? Is that in this area? It's on
Yes, it
the
is.
side, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, I'm sure Noel can speak to this, that with landowners in the Waikato, lower Waikato, you do not want scheme assets on private land. It becomes a hell of a headache. Isn't that right, Greg? And we have got several landowners that we have real issues with when we have substantial assets that are on private land with floodgates and dock banks. You may add a little bit to that, Greg.
I guess just to point out, so we undertake our work in good faith with landowners, and generally that is how it happens. I suppose we have a lot less control though over assets that are on private land as opposed to on our own land. And we can exercise different provisions to do our work. But to be fair, in most cases, landowners understand that those assets are there for community good. Quite willing for us to be doing that work on private land. We have to be reliant on the relationships we have with those landowners as well. The fact that our teams are out there regularly, inspecting, operating, maintaining those assets.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, look, when these schemes are introduced, all the landowners who are on the same page as the government and the Valley Authority or whoever, over time, land has changed hands, obviously. Those assets built in good faith on private land, but times have changed, and when issues arise, and there's been a couple of cases historically that landowners challenged who owned the land, who owned the asset, and it was found by the courts that the landowner owns the asset, and it's caused problems. So, in land drainage particularly. So, the better or the more that we have in our own council's control, it's better. Most people have got great goodwill, but there are times when it is necessary and fortuitous that it is in council ownership. So yeah, I'd support where possible moving to that totally owned asset by council.
Thank you, Noel. Questions?
One last comment to start the question around the timeline, because in the foreseeable future for that erosion, because it's got the green corridor plant along there that we're creating the berm to be dry, we were looking at 100 years or plus now under normal conditions. Like if you get a slump or a failure or a big event causes damage outside anything we've ever seen in the past, obviously that could change, but under all evidence and information we've got from the history of the scheme being built, that should last the scheme as long as we can see it, really. We wouldn't actually see the rise comes and things like that, and will have to come substantially to make any difference.
Rob, so I'm just concerned, just thinking about like a regional council owning all the flood protection assets and that sort of thing. As it rolls out, it becomes a huge amount of money, and It's no better that we start talking to government about a cohabitation type agreement so that the regional council has the right to look after its assets, but doesn't have to own the land. And so the benefit is still to the owner, that they've got the use of the land and that sort of thing. And they get the benefit of the flood protection. But we don't, we, the ratepayer, don't have to own all this asset. Because it's a creeping bill about him.
Yeah, Keith, I would agree with you if I can jump in, Robbie. If we had covenants or whatever, would be much better because, as you say, we don't need to own the land. That's the mechanism that people think about most quickly and more often than not. But I agree that where we have access, because not only do we need access to the asset, we need access across land generally. So having the ability to do that without owning it would be ideal.
That would come down to a boil, wouldn't it?
Just cover.
Yeah. Put an encumbrance on the title by agreement, hopefully.
Just to comment that in speaking with government ministers at the moment, they're quite keen on getting rid of regional councils or altering the way they operate. But would mean these schemes would come back to a catchment type arrangement or a farmer arrangement. So these sorts of issues will be more pertinent in the coming years, possibly in the next 2 years. So.
That's yet to be decided. That's looking at a crystal ball.
Absolutely, Stu.
Jim's really happy to move the recommendation as it's stated on the.
And obviously, you can watch it. And bring it up. Solution. Favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you. Just about finished this section of the report, but there's just this, sorry, I have to read.
Karen.
Well, yeah, probably it's probably me. It's been a bit temperamental time.
Too much water already. I don't think it's just us. It's behind the scenes, so.
Just wrong. This is weird. I think it's here.
To the left side. Part of their normal works program is an update on our scheme land. Sarah runs our scheme land program. But what we're just going to say for today, then page 25 is that for the last year, we undertook the 5-yearly review of our licences. Most of those have been returned, a few outstanding. Sarah's managing that process. Looking into the regular, so from an improvements perspective going forward, we're looking at on the screen, looking at a regular maintenance schedule for unlicensed land. So, for example, the foreshore, unraised land, we're looking at scheduling what's happening there, and part of that silage and conversation pops under that space. Continuing with any defects that we're responsible for, continuing to work closely with the licensees and staff to reduce the number of overall defects, looking to plan offences and near end of life conversation. So I know Sarah's it's on the next slide that talks about where the responsibility for fencing lies in a licensed arrangement. That the licensees over time change, so therefore the state of the fencing can change over time with different licensees. So it's kind of looking at those challenges and what should we be doing when they are nearing the end of life. So that's the work that's been done and trying to be fair in that space. And then of course we've got the standard annualised summer inspections program. So that's an update on the general program. Any questions on that? Can we go to photos? Fencing off on the scheme land, where we have wetlands, being required. We have some examples here on our capital work. So we've had some staff doing general cleaning rather than, operational maintenance. So our pump looks pretty good there. Though for those of the interested about the functional project, how it took us 4 years, and pretty much each photograph from the bottom up is a different year. For the work that was undertaken, and good to have that totally finished now.
Pretty impressive in the drone footage.
Yes, I do have the drone footage if anyone wants to see that later on. Some footage of it where we could, of course, there's exclusion zones where we can't fly drones, but just gives a really good impact on how the Hauraki planes works and where that fuel full shore stop bank supports the Hauraki planes. Again, stuff for the ministry to sell here, market our products. Buchanan's floodgates, some inlet erosion works and staff undertook with our contractors, abandoned mulching on our Waihau consent habitat enhancement site, so literally getting rid of the bamboo weed. Whakahora and Otway floodgates with new safety railings, so there's a lot of work being undertaken in that fall prevention space. Some examples of it. Hauraki West and Captain Cook floodgates, new safety railings, and walkways. H-drain close to Karakia inlet structure upgrade, so where the red star is on the bottom left photo. Literally you could step down into the drain from there, but that's all been replaced now with fencing. And this is all work undertaken by our own operational team. Price's single floodgate outlets, work undertaken there. North Road pump, motor renewal, removal from renewal. So working across from the top left shows you the progress of the pumping taken out. And then laid on the back of the truck. And away she went for work and was already back in again. So that's the last of the photos I've got. So is there anything in particular you want to ask me, or I'm ready to hand over to Rick to talk about the land drainage? Come. Oh, no, it's really.
Then get started. Some impressive work done in the Waiha for sure. Okay, so this is just to give you an update on the annual program and success it's been for for the last year. Covered on page 28. But again, this is I guess developed and undertaken on a collaborative approach with the landowners, with our operational team having contacts with the landowners and going out. That helps set our annual program. And one of the things we did with Nicole coming in, I guess, at the end departing is that she has been in and out and about with a lot more landowners. So there's now quite a good contact mechanism there where they will come in or they'll call and they'll let us know as their eyes and ears of what's going on in the catchment drainage area and say, can you schedule these works up? So that sort of knowledge is helped setting this year's program. Okay, so we go to the next one. So I think in general, that's just showing us what the scheme's been. We've been spending it around about 90%.
because it's a target rate, whatever isn't spent goes back to the rate. In terms of that, so it's been a very successful year for the teams. And again, that shows a pictorial version of it as compared to the other areas as well. So across the whole, Waikato and Karakia Thames Valley Land Roads, it's been a good year for developing, delivering the services. And again, that's by individual subdivision. In terms of that, so. And it's pictorial. I think each of the subdivisions, actual budget information or his independence for and independencies as well. Yeah. So this is interesting. So Nicole developed a bit more of a pictorial to let us know, or to be able to show you sort of pictorially about where we're doing the machine cleaning. So the aim of the machine cleaning, well, the program is developed around spraying all of our network once or twice a year, depending on what the requirement is. And then follow-up spraying period. With the machine cleaning, the target is to aim at about 10% of the network cleaned per year. That doesn't actually need being cleaning 10%, you only clean where required. And that, but they would be assessing the catchment as we go. So that's just letting you know through the various subdivisions, the amount of percentage of machine cleaning that was undertaken. And again, that is directed by some of the landowners coming to us and saying, in this area, it needs machine cleaning. We go and inspect what the landowners now go, no, we don't need machine cleaning through here. So it's, the guide is 10%, but often, as you can see with that program, you're sitting down around probably 5% of it.
Unless it's an emergency room, how soon can that work be done? Within 6 months, or is it in the?
I think, depending on what's being responded to out there, if there's something that needs some urgent requirement, then yes, we can go out and do that straight away. Or you do have a high flow come through and there's an obvious blockage somewhere. It's causing some issues right down a 10-year, a 10 kilometre long drain. 400 metres requiring cleaning, then we would go and do that. Otherwise, we're coming up with agreement with the landowners that actually this area hasn't been cleaned for 5 years, maybe it's time to clean that bit, and we'll put that in the program. The guys are trying to run the budget, so they run about a 10% contingency. That's in there in case there's a requirement to go and do something urgent. But you've got the reserve to rely on for that as well. But generally, I've seen a nice build-up contact between Nicole and Keith and the landowners. That's proven to be, quite effective.
So to get a decent bit of drain cleaned, that's an issue. It really would take 12 months to get it done, to get a good section done. And I know we've had issues down on the Ottaway where we've cleaned the main drain, and then some of the contributors don't get cleaned, fully loaded with settlement, and you sometimes think, well, why did we clean that bit if we didn't clean the other? Whether it's a total.
Anyway.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. So the idea of it would be talking at least a year in front of that's getting full. We'd like to catch.
Yeah, and I think they're moving to that level of planning.
Yeah.
So what we couldn't do last year and highlighted things like that are getting into the work program this year.
So maybe thanks for the pressure on Hauraki District Council, because there was we had wee issues with our spraying really done in February on the Hauraki District Council drains, not the WE drains. We had done till late May, 93 kilometres that was done then. So thanks for the pressure to get that done. We evidence gas drainage we're making it out and we've got to come to this late. So you're working with them to make sure they
it doesn't create an approach. Yeah, so that's just I guess the key thing about that is just it's a bit easier to see what's going on, but the takeaway from it as well is that there's a lot of, we couldn't get to all the done cleaning last year because of budgetary constraints, but that goes on to the plan for this year, and we're running contingency in case we need to but keeping the collar active out there with the landowners.
But 10-year maps that go with this now too, that will share, they'll actually clean. And all that on them, so you can, they'll highlight different colours, you see exactly where it's been. And we do target like 80-90% of our work program to be planned over, you know, the 10-year plan really. 3 years we expect to be pretty reliable. And then plan that other 10% of those bespoke ones that come up or issues, like we do pump station every 100 metres up, pump station every year, that's already in plan. Yeah, it's getting a lot more oversight and focus on it. It's not as ad hoc as it wasn't, but what was becomes routine. Yeah, that's this one you do. You go through and
And then you soon realise that certain areas indicating that they don't need as regular machine. Okay, next one. Okay, so that's just gives a picture of the operational reserves. There's a reserve position at 30th of June 24 to 30th of June 25. And typically with that operational reserve, you're targeting to be at 50% of the operational costs through there. I will note that in the Waiho one there, that there's 2 separate figures I think have come through. So in the earlier, in the actual package for the agenda, I think that the reserve was sitting at negative 27, but it's actually negative 22. So there is a bit of a transcription of figures that we need to go through.
Ruben, can I just ask what the zero budget for Thames Valley General? Is there nothing to do with?
Oh, that's Thames Valley General that's not attached to an actual subdivision. That's a subdivision that has the targeted rate and reserve. Yes, so there's some pictures of the work that the guys are doing, really. And this one is this is actually a really part of the issue, but I thought it was with showing. And so in that drain there was causing a bit of backflow and an issue for the whole drainage network. So they went in and did the 450 metres cleaning and went to best practice processes. We reload put the heels in the drain, 70 years ago. That was a nice bit of work in terms that it's relieved upstream pressure on the area and also got water flowing through that whole system.
It's interesting. This is probably a question, but when you clean those drains out, is there having any time the drains are good for you? Somewhere where in a straight drain, just water, how does that, what's the effect on the people's opinion? Because they usually use the cover of the land, they use some of the weeds and then.
Yeah, I mean, so it is a good point because one thing you do with our drainage networks is our drainage networks are also habitat. And that they do, we do have across the whole region a lot of habitat created through that drainage. So when you clean it, you have to. That's why if you do that stage 10 year approach that Kenny was talking about, is that you're not affecting the whole habitat. So they move upstream or downstream out of that. So the main thing is to capture and get them back into the drain because there's probably more eels living in our network than anywhere else.
Yeah. But we're doing all the other ends, seeing conversations with all the local eel fishermen and all that, the quotas and that. They told us 100% of the in our period comes out of our drainage. Since there's no numbers in the streams. Some of them have been in doing fishing right behind us doing our work. It's still catching big numbers in like a week behind the work. And quite interestingly, when you look at the MFE information, it says, I think Waikato is one of the only places in the world that two numbers are increasing, yet 80% of New Zealand's commercial take to schemes. So something is going pretty good.
It's not so much that it's the fact that as someone who finds the brains and the eels and the growth in there, it was a survival for them. But when you clean them out like that, and you put them back, they don't have that they don't have that safety of what some of the growth you've taken out.
I mean,
I just wonder, and so what is the benefit? I know there is a benefit to farm or whatever, but why do we clean the drains so often like to make it so clean like that?
So we try not to clean the drain, which is why the drain paint costs. And when we clean them, and when we spray, we try to only do what it's doing. So it's still got those paints, still got the habitat, still got all of those benefits in it. That one up the top right, so it's got the substantial clean on one side, but still grass still on the right, and it looks like there's a side drain he swapped sides on.
Yes.
And we can only clean on one side, obviously. But I've seen massive disturbance to those fish down there. They're like the 70 or 80 just in this 450 meters here. But down Hopi and some of your guys' areas, at least thousands and that kind of meterage. So we've changed our practices about how we dig it. We use different types of buckets. We actually go through a disturb it first to get them to migrate away, move away, and then you dig. And it's just the ones that get come out, the ones that try to hide in the weed on the side of digging, they come out to live. Most of them will just naturally go back into the drain, but we go along and make sure everything that's in there goes back up. So I haven't seen a massive outcome from or impact from it. And talking to like Graham, all the local we've lived in the local area, but they say that we were cleaning and they were fishing right behind us, catching huge numbers. So
yeah, and I guess that you do have some disturbance when you're cleaning, because to keep the drainage network effective, you do have to keep it clean. And, so the more we can spray and less we clean, we try and do that in terms of that. So, don't clean the whole draining areas. So you end up by sort of cleaning, and then you've probably got a 5 to 10 year space in that cleaning, and most areas where they have to get built up again.
some of the information we did around our comprehensive sea monitoring and all that is actually showing benefits from doing some of the cleaning, especially with Myceria and those kind of species, because they're like Enum and they won't spawn on them. As soon as it's blocked, we're not getting the mullets and those kind of other species coming up the waterways because they don't migrate up anymore. So they're actually finding quite a bit more life behind cleaning if it's done right. You can do it wrong and you get a diverse effect from it. We're also getting a lot of the forest birds game that actually requesting us to go and do a lot of cleaning for a lot of the avian species because they don't, a lot of them won't actually roost or nest in that around the big, really overgrown species. So they're actually asking us to go and do it for, so if you take all of the species into context, I think the conversation about tuna, but like I say, in all my time, we haven't seen an adverse effect yet, personally, but we try to reduce the amount of sprays we put in them. We don't clean. We get farmers, certain farmers every year that ring up and go, oh, my drain's full, it's clean last year. We don't just go and do it because they ask. We go and have a look at the questions of limits to make sure we're meeting our level of service. But then you've got other times they never complain about anything. There's really doing it. So it's like we go and speak them as well. But it's definitely not just my drainage fitting, we're in there.
We prefer to do our spraying then. We've got some stuff as information agreements in the Waikato, where some of our farmers tend to go and spray. We prefer to have a registered contractor do them so that we know that they're not spraying from road to bank to fence line. That's taking everything. So those challenges. But the teams have been a great year for them. They've delivered well on it and they're well planned and started. So again, this is just some pictures of moving down through.
So we'll monitor the meter rate of cost against us and every contractor that we do it over the year, and we've monitored that for a few years, but we've actually seen it as well, so that we're keeping all the contractors honest for that and perhaps say I'm going to building chips to do it. But yeah, it's good checks and balances on how they're performing and making sure that we're doing the right thing for break layer and environmentally do under our consents and activities to be able to do it.
I think in the last meeting we talked about doing some relabeling of our drains. So they're going through and relabeling drains as part of that. I think they're going to move up and do the one Manawatu as well. We just will have Camex contractors coming to that area as well, so they'll, and I think there's been some good discussion with landowners out there as well as just say, oh, I think we're training over there, it's actually, and for us as well, so.
There was a bit of concern from those, from the commercial guys about certain sprays. They used to get used, they found when they were getting put in there, they'd go and do their catch and all the food would be burning away from them. But most of them were banned and being able to use those for water now. But that was their main concern, was just monitoring, keep an eye on what happens after spraying, changing.
If we can't, was it mainly, what happens when you're digging up and you get hooked up?
We have to use the names and get rid of. So every time we block off the stream, we do any maintenance on our assets, we block it off, deep water. If there's any native species, we have to transfer them back alive. Every pest fish gets euthanized. I'm quite sure what we're saying, and then disposed of. We're not allowed to, it's actually illegal back in. And quite amazingly, like because there's heaps of other bad species in here as well, like catfish numbers in here are just astronomical. But everyone that turns up gets destroyed.
They can't do it with food.
You need a big volume to get in there to do it. I think I know council did a heap of trials on that. We were getting like 8 people early and things like that, so take away for free. Start using for burley.
There's so many men. I get involved with the koi carp classic, which is when the bow hunters go bow fish the koi carp in the Waikato, but they also now come across to the Arthur as well. There's some big fish in that system. In some years we've got 6 ton, 7 ton of fish from shooting, pulling the bags with doing it. So there was an inordinate amount of koi carp. I don't know how you can hold. But we've got them out as our scheme and we're talking about the species.
One of the things that does come up from time is people saying that's part of the pollution system is the effluent.
They certainly do. When you get up around the Atlantic area and Antarctica area, and they are undermining banks and causing a lot of issues and drainage channels up there as well. And also from so
He's in New Landowner saying that koi carp is doing some real damage around ABC. That's not well. It's actually trying to widen because of the carp unwinding the bank. Yes.
Yeah, it's one thing that I know there's a joint between council and Doc and looking at it. But we did promote a couple of those bow fishing tournaments and that in those areas, and that was as a request of the subcommittee some time ago. We'll work with landowners to get them in to actually get them off their farms. And when we did so, we actually managed to get them to remove the longfin eel off their, because it was part of the competition was catching bow hunting longfin eels. So we said that's important. So they actually removed that off their point scoring and their comps now. But leading them through is a good thing because every one of them comes out to a benefit to our waterways.
That was really another question. The fence lines on the edge of the drain is obviously different to bigger waterways or woodlands, because that doesn't look very So what's the difference in why?
So the big waterways under the National Policy Statement, it's 3 metres for an artificial drain. There's no requirement on it. We try to promote setback as long as we can maintain and things like that. Normally, because it is the drains, we don't own the drains. They don't own land most of the time. They're just trying to get that balance between the two. And quite often, because it's an artificial drain, it does get dug every 10, 15, 20 years. You've got to be able to either set it back wide enough for a digger to go on the inside of it, or you've got to have it right on the edge. You can actually reach over and do that maintenance. So that's quite often why it's within a metre of it, so that it's.
So in this instance here, what we're promoting is planting of the drains so that there's less machine cleaning required and less spraying required over time. So in terms of that particular one. So they come through, they clean it out, reshape it, plant it, fences in, and then
That's pretty perfect.
Oh, it doesn't.
It's here.
A PC one's up.
Unless the meter back from me. Tom, from the top.
But it's got to be proven that it stops exclusion. It's around that, and that's another thing we'll be working with our policy people and all that on, is around water use and taking better use of this water, because most of the nutrients that they end up in the water actually come by these drain. Just receiving one, so trying to put in like filter farms, but still track at the bottom, will recycle that water back through their farm, so any nutrients are washed in there, we got to go back on. That's currently under our policies and regional plans, that's not allowed. That goes into waterways, and you go and get it out of the stream, you can reuse fresh water on your land through again. So we're just trying to get benefits, improvements in that space. We had a meeting on it last week actually, so about policy showing them around these things. But all sites is the biggest benefit you actually get on where that comes from, and smaller drains not.
There's not the biggest situation.
So
this.
just be with me, because if we don't need the drain, which is we're cleaning, and if farmers can access that water at any time for their land, and why is that? I mean, why do they have to wait to get to a bigger pool before they can access?
Because that's part written to the.
Yes, it doesn't make sense.
There's not a lot of water goes down those drains. Quite often, for 6 months, they're actually got no water internally on farm. But the board drains go through a farm and others feed into it. But every farmer has access to a board drain at the top end of the catchment. Okay. Right to their boundary.
But we've got no way to access any of the water on that drain.
And I guess, yeah, but it's not a lot, there's actually not a lot of pollution that goes in those drains. Farmers do this properly on the farm.
Yes, as the farm practices get better and you have these fencings, you have the plantings that deep, you're getting a lot of filtering coming to before water gets into the drain. Now this one here, this was funded by government funding. So it was one of those projects where we applied for, was a tranche one funding just covering this project. So we successfully built it for the first year, $1 million here. And the team is sitting today, as we're meeting today, they've got a planning session on about where we're going to do the next lot of planting and drain planning to support the shed.
Because of good places, because look at that, you go, why have they cleaned it that way? That's not what we do.
That's not what we normally
We don't speak that, that picture being planted up like somebody said, they go from up place. That's been better to actually plant up so we can reduce that ongoing maintenance. So that's a good thing, but that's not a normal way we do our drainage. Normally their banks, both sides wouldn't have been touched.
They only do the bottom.
They say, I simply, but you do it's horrified, it's smoking stuff.
Yeah, so that's to promote planting.
Yeah. And
Planting that you just finished, the difference is one is good plants and the other's weeds.
Yeah.
Basically carrots have been planted.
Yeah, so grasses, but this is about laying that bit as well. So it's
See that. It
Let's
looks
stay with
good.
what
We did a good job.
So we did do the trials of the Thames Valley Drainage Committee, which they are still not fully proven yet, but they were put in there for the basis of can it save cost, can it reduce the maintenance, and that I think some of our trials have been in now for around here, like 7 or 8 years, and those ones that are really for 7 or 8 years, we haven't had to spray them yet. So there's 25 cents and all that reduction. It will take a few more years to realise any cleaning, because the biggest cleaning requirement of these types of drains is actually those weeds. You go through and spray them, that dies down. It's that better, that locks the drains up. So any reduction in that spraying, also any reduction in cleaning, and reduction in cost and environment effects. So it's all getting better to that. So it's not just replacing one type with another type. It's replaced one that done, won't get sprayed out.
and provides shade and
Yeah.
And I guess it was that trial and the success of those trials that provided the evidence to go to the government to get funding to do this. So
Thank you.
This was also a part of a workshop that we were doing Monday.
Piping come. Did piping come? Like these drains to see.
No, it came up in that workshop that that restoration of catchments, I think, well, this is my opinion, Warren, if I'm wrong, but I definitely pushed, I was chairing the meeting that
Yeah.
I think, communities and landowners should decide the value of how much they put towards this because it's going to be a targeted rate. And then we can do more on it because you look at it, what the Waikato zone accomplishes compared to Hauraki, and we're always full cousin. And the only way to fix that is our communities decide what they want spent in this area, not politicians. It doesn't become an election issue or a budget requirement every 2 or 3 years. Just get on with the work and get it done. So I think that's what came out of that discussion on Monday. Does that be right one?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I just.
Yeah, so I think that works towards what you're doing with drain planning, but maybe we could do more and do it on a catchment scale instead of just picking spots. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a bit of a participation with Tartan School. This is one of the last one. It was a successful planting over the section of training adopted by the school. So yeah, so if there's any landowners that are keen on having some school planting done, give Nicole the she could take a call, she said.
And the good thing about that, but the good thing about this, we're teaching our young people about catchment care. And they will, my kids did this way back, they're 40 odd now, and they still remember that day when they were young. So it's good because they plant left, right, and centre.
Yeah, totally.
We use the wood.
Thank you.
Stop sharing data. That's the end of work.
Oh, when we did the,
We did them both.
we did the both, yeah,
Okay.
so you can carry on.
I'll just take it everyone's read the proposed land purchase. So yeah, this has been discussed for quite a few years, long before my time. It's been discussed about purchasing this segment of land. So it's been on the radar for some time, and it's been identified as important for supporting the scheme in this area. So this piece of land stands out because it's wedged into the wetland between the Koputai Peak Dome and what's locally known as the Flex Block. It wasn't purchased during the original round of purchasing for the scheme, but funding has now been allocated for this, so we're now looking to proceed with that and purchase. So it's 18.1 hectares of land. It's the only access point into this part of the peak dome. So this area of, you've got the Koputai on this side and you've got the Flex Block up here. It's the only access for iwi, for WRC, Fish and Game, for any of the other stakeholders into this part of the peak dome. And we also have the main Mokoro line canal and stop bank that runs right down that length there. As you can see, there's been a bit of flood funding in there. So yeah, that lying in between those two areas creates a bit of a pinch point, and you've got spillway that are activated in flood events around this area. And original modelling has, we've got data for the peak of a flood event. There would be further modelling required for the start and the tail end of a flood event. But yeah, the next slide, we've got a video to play, which is Brian Ockelston explaining the hydraulics of the area and the importance of that segment of land. So Are you able to play
Well,
there? Hopefully this, I've got a memory stick. We have trouble.
So Grant Alston is a senior project manager for us. He's a contractor, but he's highly experienced in this, in the Hauraki Plains, and he's done major projects.
it's crossed.
This overland flow path on your screen is a significant overland flow path. And the modelling work that we've done shows that up to 70% of floodwaters in the design storm event flow down this overland flow path and not in the river itself. And so, maintaining control of this overland flow path is a very important aspect of scheme management into the future. This particular, Google Earth aerial photo shows, post a recent flood in 2017, and from that we can glean some important information around how the scheme operates. In particular, when you zoom in, you can see, the weed that would normally be, sitting covering the entire pond. You can use that weed to indicate how the water has flowed through this site, and you can see it's from a southerly to a northerly direction, because the weed is sitting at the northern end of the ponds. So this is our key overland flow path. To the left, you can see the Piako River, which is, has significant sediment, laden water moving down the river. And between the two pieces of information of how the pond's weed is sitting, we can understand, with clear evidence that how the water interacts as it flows down the entire scheme between the river and the overland flow path. And so it's clear that this overland flow path during this flood event operated in a significant manner, hence the weed sitting at the northern end of these ponds. And we can also see that significant breakout of the river water enters the what is termed the ABCD flex block. And so our clear understanding from the model is this overland flow path operates, and it actually crosses over the Piako River proper and enters the ABCD flex block. And then from that, as the flex box fills with water, it enters back into the river further downstream through spillways that have been designed into the banks that run down the left-hand side of the Piako River. You can see from this ponding or the weed on the ponds themselves that in this particular area, which is sort of near high ground in this corner on this inside bend, there is some high ground, that the water actually travelled in an easterly direction or a northeasterly direction from the information that's presented on this pond. And what this tells us is that the main overland flow is obviously flowing down here and flowing directly into the ABCD flex block, but in this location it's actually not able to do that very easily, and so the water that's coming down the overland flow path here has to travel in an easterly direction, most likely primarily caused by a low level bank on the true right of the Piako River, but also this dock asset stop bank that runs along the boundary of this private land. And so because the overland flow path can't enter the flex block in this zone because of the stop bank, it has to travel in an easterly direction to get round it and then flow into the ABCD flex block further downstream. So there is a strong possibility that this dock stop bank is impacting upon the interaction of flow through the overland flow path. So one of our concerns in relation to this dock stop bank is the ability of the river to return to normal levels, post a flood event. And one of the concerns that we have, which isn't able to be confirmed in the current makeup of the model for the Piako River, because it's modelling peak flows and not early stages of the flood event or the latter stages of the flood event. But there is concern raised by the landowners that it takes a long time for the Piako River to return back to normal, normal river levels above the Makoro landing. And it is hypothesized that part of the reason for that is the infrastructure that sits in this part of the scheme. Primarily, low-lying stop banks running along this parcel of land that keeps the water from, traversing through to the ABCD flax block, but also the dock stop bank, which also has a potential to restrict that return to normal flows within the Piako River. What's also interesting in relation to this dock stop bank is you can see that on the northern side of that dock stop bank, we clearly have a water flow in a northerly direction on the other side, and we know from the model that and the survey data that there is a low point where it connects in to the Makoro line stop bank. And so any water that does arrive here, when it's up at a certain level, it pours over the low point in the stop bank near the Makoro line stop bank and then enters the ABCD flax block. And hence the reason why, you see the pond showing, weed, pushed to the northern end. And that is a concern for the scheme, management, because it's encouraging, a high volume and rate of water to pass very near an important flood defence stop bank.
So that just sort of gives a bit of background about the hydrology of that area and why it paints a good picture about if we were able to own this land and have control of this land, we could look at, making any necessary potential adjustments to allow water to flow more easily through there, potentially drain land upstream quicker after flood events. We also, in the coming couple of years, there's an upgrade plan for the Mokoro line stop bank. It's in need of upgrading, and we would also have to look at purchasing land for that upgrade anyway of this particular landowner. But being able to just reform the dock stop bank and also removing any low-lying unofficial stop banks along the left bank on the land would give us access to a great deal of fill to use for that particular upgrade, which I think we worked out it was around about $300,000 in savings, just in having to purchase fill from other locations as well. So there are financial benefits for us operationally, with some planned upgrade works for owning that land as well as potential collaboration with other stakeholders. DOC expressed an interest in wanting to contribute as well if we were to purchase this bit of land. Any restrictions?
Yeah, so there's a couple of issues there that stop bank on dock land is formed illegally, and there's little even there between public conservation and landowner currently. This plan does not go through, they're going to be the all of that. It also gives access to our assets along that part of the route there. It also gives iwi post-settlement access along the river there, because they've got any access into that area, and DOC's got no legal access into that area either. So it opens up that opportunity for all of us to do our function and needs in there. I know if John Drever's here, he's been hot on this for many years about that bank going in and the impacts of the scheme, because it's about the it's the tail end effect of how long it holds it at the top end. Like in the 2017 events, everything that Grant spoke about then is real. It's flowed over that Duxbury river, and there was a photo of Vaughan, our effects CEO, and the paper I was standing on the bank opposite that with it coming back out. And when we hit that pinch point, we've been up in the boat to open the weirs and that water out. We got to that one point and we literally got blown sideways in the boat and couldn't almost get past because that's where all that flow was coming in. So there is a big benefit, like, because we're going to finish the bank anyway, the offsetting of using that material to build that bank plus benefiting the scheme is, kind of stacks up liquidity by itself, but there's a lot of misunderstanding around the Kaputai, protection of the Kaputai and the Soberley flow path. So when the original wetland map was put over the Kaputai, was put in as a scientific reserve over the actual Kaputai domes itself, which is boundary of the overland flow path that he was talking about, and the actual peat domes, because that's where all the protected species and all that are in the flow path. It's all grey willow, crack willow, blackberry, it's not really great habitat. Some grazing. Yeah, because it used to be grazed, and the Lands and Survey Department back in the 1950s spent $5 million back then actually forming a fund that goes along the boundary of this overland flow path and the dome. And the reason for that was to allow this overland flow path, and all the reports that said it needs to be protected into the future for this exact purpose. But it was also put in there to protect the dome to stop, because it's tidal up to this area now, and they were starting to get brackish water going into the dome, which would kill the dome. So it's an actually protected wetland. And again, we need to make sure that the rules and all that allow, and the policy will allow the work to get the dual benefits. Because a lot of the scheme work along here that's been done of digging the weed and all that and placing it on the wetland side has created funds along there which actually protect it. Currently that's under the National Environmental Standards that will change because we won't be able to do that anymore. So we'll put it on the other side while we're losing the environmental benefits of doing that. But that flow path we were shown, like I say, all the original government reports said it must be managed and part of the scheme. But somewhere along the lines that map's been changed and that wetland's been mapped now to the very outside, including the mineralised zone, which is a challenge because that mineralised zone is where we get all our sediment dump. It's where that's what cleans the waterway up. Like that water you're seeing that's clear, it's the same water that's come in there, it's just filtering going through there. So yeah, that's the I need to add in there. And below this point in 2017, really didn't go into flood for very long. Below High Geary, that didn't go to flood at all, go into tidal reach. But up here, they stayed under for months. But it just couldn't funnel out because once it's got to get back into the river to come out that much, we shouldn't be going out that whole flow path.
You're only talking about stuff there, Kenny, that yeah, Sean and a few others were around the table, that old members that used to sit in the old flood protection committee would say those discussions you just said were known 20 and 30 years ago quite well by the membership of the catchment board and others that were sitting around the tables. And I'm glad that importance has come back into it now.
So in that picture you can see there, so just so everyone's clear, the overland flow path he was referring to is this area. Yeah. So that's the grey willow, crack willow. This is the line of Manuka, and then Manuka is actually built on the original lands, growing on the original Lands and Survey bund because it's higher elevation. So it's about getting the water through here, and yeah, that is the stop bank. That is the challenge because the flow path should be going through that, not through that, and then reduced at the tail end of that, because this bank here used to be, before they put that bank in there, at the same level as the berm of this, so it would actually be spilling through that whole lot. So it's quite a substantial area.
Concern about the pressure at the current line can't be underestimated.
Yeah.
We're really concerned about stopping that on this line down here.
Just before Mr. Sarah retired with us, he had to go, you and Steve today had to repair the stopping here after the 2017 floods because that flow going past it undermined it, and we actually had slumping of that stopping in that location.
If you want to subject, so against stop.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I struggle to know who's the rightful owner of that, and I can't see the regional councils to be. So who owns the tax box 1, 2, and 3?
So they're considered government land. Originally, they were under scheme management. More recent times, Doc's taken the main management control of it because it's got matters that we have.
So who owns Kaputai?
It's getting handed back to iwi and settlement, but it's just sees government land.
So to me, it's a nonsense. Like regional council owning that piece of land.
Oh, sorry, it's privately owned.
Yeah, but it should be brought back into either the Dock estate or the iwi estate. What are we doing out here? All we want to do is manage it.
The important thing as well to consider is the current owners, our relationship with the current owners is quite amiable. So we're able to get in there to do what we have to do at the moment. We're not able to, we don't have any control over the lower stop bank that runs on the left of the Piaka or that Dock stop bank. So the only way we can have really control over this area is to have ownership of the land so that we can do what we need to do. Otherwise, you'd never be able to convince someone else that owns it to.
Or a covenant.
We have easement access way.
I was just going to ask, it says here, Dock have indicated previously that interested contributing to the purchase. Given Dock's current financial position, do you anticipate money?
They have a legal ability with their bank. They are in the current land and built it. So regardless of the liability, just the original conversation with them is the liability going towards a betterment, it's going towards lawyers. So they indicate that they will be able to fund some.
Does this come out of existing reserves or is it taken?
The cash purchase for the land, should we go for that option? Would draw down on our reserve to do that? Because it would be a new message. There'd be no physical appreciation fund or anything to go in use. Reduce put us further into debt to do this. But weighing it up against the benefits to the scheme is probably what we're talking about today.
So if we purchased the land as regional council, you would remove that Dock stop bank?
They material to move the bank if it comes along the
left-hand side there.
Along the left, that bank has got very steep bank. It's sort of full state. Probably worst one. This one's on the Piaka.
So it's actually a very tall bank here. It's what vicinity of 3.5 meters.
Yeah,
tall. It's a huge bank.
So the land is probably owned, the stock bank is owned by.
it's
Sitting on the private land.
Sorry?
Sitting on the private land, but it was put there by Weaver Department of Conservation.
So if we purchase the land, obviously, so I'm just trying to get my head around, trying to understand the pictures. So the land at the moment is.
Agricultural land.
Yeah, so if it's needed for water to flow from the curb through to ABC, owning the land would mean that the water will flow over that land into there once we take the stop bank away, right? And we even put the dirt on the stop bank,
Can use
closer to the Piaka River.
Stop bank goes along with.
Not down this other
You
end.
use that, build that other.
So obviously, the owner in his day didn't want the water flowing from the Piaka across his land to the ABC place, obviously.
There's been many issues with that block of land that I know over the last 30 years, that the landowner and DOC, there's something went wrong, and the only way that DOC could mitigate their way out of it was actually allowing that bank to be built or something like that. There was a lot of issues and
Yeah, and so that's I guess okay, but what I'm trying to ensure that a purchase of a piece of land like that is really feasible, because if that's the access way, they can only be an access way when the water is not high and the water is not further. What happens while the land is flooded? What access way do you have then to where you want to go?
You don't need to go to every sides and comes back up. We only have to go and manage the castellation drains, which is the low points to go in and out, and to manage the bank during a flood event. The only access we need along there is by a boat into the central drain there, which is just above here. Other than that, we let the flood go through and we manage outside of that area.
And I guess the other key issue is that the material that we dig out will be used to build the Makura line stock. So that's an offset of about $300,000. So you know, spend and bringing material, buy the land, use that, and then have that asset.
Yeah, so
Just some control of what you do.
just to clarify, so if it was costing 450 to buy, and you save 300,000 by stock bank material, 150 there, is that something DOC will fund? If they're busy in the legal case and it's going to stop the work? I see DOC's got no money, but it's just saying that they've got a legal case that they're fighting and they're spending legal fees on. They would stop the legal fees if they.
Yeah, we'd have to negotiate that with them, find out how much exactly. We didn't want to go to them with exact figures until we had this conversation. Committee and council. I think it would be up around there. Plus, there's also the return of, if you're cutting the hay and managing the land, there's ongoing return of it as well.
Yeah, but it's not on $100 because that's the cost of your bailiwick costs $38 to $42. Yeah, so it's only $60 per dollar. Yeah, you need to look at that, the legal costs.
So there's a slight income with the land.
There'll be an ongoing benefit to the scheme, but there's also at some point we're going to have to purchase land gardeners. So if we don't buy the whole land, we're going to have to take enough for the stopping anyway. And the access way for all government agencies anyway at the moment is of good will. If we lose that, then we're going to have to do a public works and take to get there.
And then if you have to buy the land under Public Works Act, and you've got a lease that's left out there,
So anyway, she doesn't pay steer rates on the stuff.
to do it.
Yeah, just
That land in time, we should end up being back with Western Reserve, so that it's only short term behaviour can so it should be.
it's pretty good for us. It's just, it's only in this really big events. It's only been this always on virtually. It's been 3 times in the last 60 years. That's a good flood like that. It's been the big one. It's been a big benefit comes in from a normal daily operation. Won't have any impact on really, but you get a design beat about 20 a year that it's got significant impacts.
So it's just using.
Yeah.
So just wanted to check if,
no, Karen just.
I was just going to say, if we agree to this recommendation, what's the next stage? Does it come back for council or?
So my understanding of what we think the next stages would be, should you agree to this, of course, it's got to go through the formal council processes to actually undertake.
Diligence.
Should they be approved? Our vision for this piece of land would be reconfirmation of our hydraulic needs. So understanding what the problems are specifically on the ground, then turning that information into evidence-based decision making. So what is it that we need to do to make a change? And in that period of time, we've been managing the property. We've been supporting the overall scheme projects by providing that site material. But we would also be reporting back to, should this committee be available, what those decisions are. So that it wasn't like staff just went away and did what we thought we wanted to do. It would come back as this committee about what we've learned, what we think we need to do, and from a whole of scheme approach, getting support for the next stages. Okay, so it wouldn't be, you know nothing more about it. We'll come back to this committee for the next steps.
And how long would that take? How long would you
I would say,
in the purchase? Because I know what purchase is all about. You know, one day it's this price and then 3 months later it's gone up.
Yeah.
You know, so
again, we would be using the Public Works Act processes, requirements. We know what it kind of means around a per hectare or per square metre rate at the moment. So we have an understanding of what that means. We would try and progress within the next 6 months purchase if it should be something that the committee and ICM support.
Okay, so why haven't we used the Public Works Act to take the land? I mean, confiscation of land is back in day, you know, it's not something they don't know how to do.
Yeah. If we needed to use the Act, we would use the Act. Use the Act processes to support the staff's decision making. We aren't enforcing the Act in that space.
But well, I'm looking at the cost of it, at the fact that you have to go through different avenues to get this approved. When at the end of the day, if the Crown can use the Public Works Act, which they're not shy of using, why haven't we at least looked at that avenue in the first instance and using the purchase as a plain B? Just a question.
I think prior years that's been the discussion.
We've been talking about this land for many, very long before I
It comes, we did look at that.
Yeah.
It actually comes with a higher cost in negotiating with the landowner. So as soon as you go into public works, you've got to pay a 10% premium on top, plus this, and what's called like insurance fiction and other outcomes.
So you've looked at it, that's the main thing. Yeah, because the important thing about all of this is we need to have, we're a Crown entity no matter what happens. So the first instance, I would have thought, well, they should be helping us to get the land to help them to do blah, blah, blah. And I know for a fact that the Public Works Act doesn't, they don't shy away from confiscating land. They don't do you, they can't either. So I'm just making sure you've done that, but it didn't work. Now purchasing is the next avenue. Come on, I'm all good with that. In the meantime, while you do all this, ensure that that's locked in, because it might take you months to get all your diligence reports back to the council, and the cost is going to be. So it's important.
So, yeah, that is a job.
I'm not agreeing.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're not recommending it?
Well, it's not going to affect me in the long run. It's going to affect that where I live. As a councillor, and be happy that I have to the people. Unless they say this is a good idea, then fine. If they say no, then I'm going to think at the end of the day. They're the ones who vote for me. Obviously, sorry guys. Political. It's election time. I don't need it. I don't need the election. I'm in.
Sure.
I'll just leave it.
Congratulations.
Right.
So,
You need to move forward on recommendation.
is that worded right? The report proposed land purchase portion, Hauraki scheme, that the Hauraki subcommittee.
No, sorry.
Should not be.
Yeah, that's the recommendation. It's the correct wording out there. Yes, again, sorry, I apologise. The wrong recommendation jumped into the wrong.
Okay, no. It's just that, that was really that the Hauraki is that we support the completion of the land purchase. Shouldn't we be supporting you to go away and do the diligence work to come back to us with a tick box to say, yep, we'll all go, we'll purchase. So it should be the Hauraki scheme support, the support in principle, the completion of the land purchasing depending on, because what this will make us say, yep, we agree, but actually we may not agree because your findings may not suit us. Then, come on, we should see the head.
I think what we're saying is our findings to date support the staff's recommendation to purchase. What the information is that we don't have is what we need after that to support the scheme's hydraulic flow in an appropriate way to support the scheme's levels of service.
Do Yeah, so that will help us with that, because you're required to agree to a purchase, yet you're gonna go into something.
We know it has, it's a hindrance to the scheme.
Isn't it ICA put it? So
I know, we are allowed to make a recommendation.
That's council.
council.
So what you could do is you could support the completion in principle of this. And by resolving that you're not binding catchment or council to making their purchase, so the due diligence process still applies. So it's still catchment can look at the bigger picture of the hotel and whatnot.
Making it safe for you
Council,
to go ahead and do your money. Making it safe for us, by saying we didn't say go buy it, then do the diligence. We want you to do all of that. Come back to us with all of the pictures and we comfortably sit here and go, bye.
And I know there's a teacher strike at the moment, and principal is saying that principal should be LD.
that's one of my favorite words. Separate, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the word that beats me as well, by the way.
So I was just going to say, just pretty much sum up what, I understood with the 10 minutes around. You're just seeking today, I guess, in principle, that really support to move through the process. So it's not complete the land purchase and off the table.
But you haven't said that.
Move through, yes. But what Karen is out, we just haven't written it detail.
But that's not not correct.
So what it should say, in principle, moving through the process. Yes.
Where's it now?
What you could do is just take away the completion off.
Yes.
Support in principle, the land purchase related to, so that doesn't bind you to completing the land purchase, you're just supporting the theory of it.
Through the process.
Yes.
Happy with that?
No, no. I'm a big fan of council having control over the land itself. Too many times in my career, I've seen things go horribly wrong, lawyers involved, and money be spent on things that aren't actually the purchase of assets that protect people in land. I genuinely think that we're not there. There's not. I would like to support the purchase of the land. I still think the due diligence needs to be done. There's not enough to convince me that this is a good idea. At this point, the other thing I would like to do is link back to the start of the meeting. I think that this is what this subject is for. Things like this is where we can provide a real value. We can speak up on behalf of the ratepayers, the landowners. So I know that's not relevant to the motion, but this is the kind of thing that I think as a ratepayer and representative I'm here to do, is to say, and to look at issues like this and say, this is what I think. But in this case, yeah, look, I think it could be a really good idea, but in terms of actually, putting my hand on my heart and saying it's definitely a good idea, it's still, that's what the resolution needs to say, is we would go through with it if it's next. Good, and that's the case in stand up.
So just picking up on your point, Peter, would it be better to say that the subcommittee supports a business case returning to committee?
I think so, yeah. I think I'll be
Which as a council, I'd be more happy seeing to due diligence on the business case return, pluses and minuses in that business case, and then you could make a decision to recommend it for.
Yes, and also look at covenant as an option. Yeah.
Can I just jump in, Robbie? These subcommittee meetings are held quite infrequently, and some of the criticism historically has been that it took too long to get things sorted. So I appreciate the sentiments that you want to see a little bit more detail and so on. The reality is, do you want, if it stacks up, to take the extra time before it comes back to the committee? Because I believe they should be in a format that's perhaps enhanced next time. So just when you make the recommendation or change, as Warren's outlined, the time to come back to the committee, it may be a relevant time frame, but just sometimes we've got to be careful what we ask for, and I know that I wouldn't want to sign something off unless it's stacked up. So, which I think is what the landowners have been saying, which is the very purpose of why we have these committees. So, yeah, just on that, Robbie. So, would the staff indicate how long that might take before you actually look at moving that resolution, please? Thanks.
And presumably our next meeting in Noel is March, if the sequences continue.
Yeah, March. So there's 5 months, 6 months, whatever, reasonable.
6 months. Basically.
Yeah, I'm suggesting 6 months.
Okay, so therefore the time frame aligns, and so I'm more comfortable supporting that. Thanks.
I think I'm a little bit confused about what additional information we would like. Part of it says that how much stocks will contribute, but most of those other things are pretty well worked out into what the cost also.
It's just the modelling, wasn't it?
So the modelling, to redo that, that's 500,000. It's more than the land purchase to do a model to show a tailing effect. The model does indicate that it is causing an issue, but it just doesn't cause a major issue at the peak because it's flowing over top of those banks at that point. It's when it comes back down to that level, and the model shows a big impact then. So it's already demonstrating the benefit current and the existing model. It just doesn't reduce the peak of the flow, which is what we're predicting. And so that's what he meant by that one. So it shows that it's dragging out the recovery and that, but won't lower the need for banks or else it's going to flow over. By the time you use that line, so because that's spillway banks, it's already on top of that.
I used to look for covenanting would be the other option.
That's what
And also, I presume it comes back in public excluded, we're actually getting costs of what you might be spending on purchasing.
It's just through the chair, in terms of covenant, it would be hard to put a covenant over private land if the private land doesn't do it. So that's a legal mechanism we couldn't use, I believe.
Unless they agree.
Unless they agree. So in this instance, I think there's been discussions around the purchase and there's a willing buyer, willing seller arrangement, which excludes the Public Works Act, but you use that process to guide you. If you did go to the Public Works Act and tried to buy just a bit of land for the corridor, and he would be left with some stranded land, he would be required to buy the whole lot anyway. So the underlying factor is that the money that you would save by bringing in fill from the land there would still fund the purchase. And you end up with the asset that you have control of. So that's just giving it from a different perspective, having done some work through the Public Works Act.
And if you go back to the 90s, there was always talk that area should have had a spillway in there to go into the ABC flat spot. So the river, can we bring the photos back up, please? Because it was always talked about that should have had a flow over land through there instead of actually to take the pressure off the Makora landing corner. That it should have been able to take a direct route into there and take the pressure off the river. That's been talked about for 30 odd years. So.
In the 90s, they talked about it.
The one with the triangle.
Yeah. That's when Rodney Luxton was actually a councillor, so that's how long ago it was. So yeah, back in those days, we were talking about putting an overland flow through here of how deep are the bulldozer ones that Craig Challis pushed in years ago, about 0.5 metre deep. Yeah. Yeah. Which they all were in these here to allow the water to come in here earlier as well. So I was talking about putting an overland flow through here that would actually increase the capacity of the river. The original scheme had the Piaka River redirected from here coming out of Waitaki to the Makora Canal. That line perfectly with here, which is why it's called Makora on Subland. So it's going to straighten the whole river from there out. Yeah. Then they realised it wasn't going to do it here, but the overland flow part was residual actually.
Excuse me, it's EPM got some thoughts here.
Yeah.
It's a nonsense bank, no? No, what's there for? You're going to put things through it, you might as well take the bank out.
Yeah, that's what the plan is, to take the bank out.
Yeah.
But we're gonna buy it to take the bank there. You know the owner?
Roger. There's 80 of us following.
But Robert, did I just remind members that you need to consider what we need as councillors.
Yeah.
You need to consider what's going to go back to ICM. And we haven't seen a business case with the facts and figures, so I mean, you need that. And I added no Greg, obviously, we've got the director here, and then you also need what ICM will have to take to council to get approved. And I agree with Peter at this stage, as a councillor sitting on it, I wouldn't approve this with facts and figures are there in front of us, the benefits. And I understand and may get the benefits, that's a doubt, but you've got to remember what you've got to take back, because we've heard earlier on in the session how things just go round and round and round.
Yep.
And also, we're in an intermediate period. There won't be a proper council meeting February next year. So if this is March, it's about time.
Yeah, so that, I think that gives them time to come back with a business case and the information required to purchase the property.
So it goes back, if we decide that this table was able to do their recommendation to purchase, there are things they need to do.
Yeah.
Not what Ken's already, that what they've done, there's additional stuff. So that additional stuff you need to do. So in principle, we agree that, hey, go ahead and do the mucking, bring it back, we'll see where we are.
Just, we did this with Mr. Sorry, Chair, my concern going forward is dragging this out and then we have a major failure of the other bank. So as long as it's kept in the tight time frame whether we can still maintain the asset of the property. But it's sometimes what's happened, it's not 1 year, it's 4 years, 5 years. That the bank will then be.
Well, wasn't the Coralini was a part of tranche 3? That's the next one. The next stopping upgrade package we've got on the schoolway starts for Canal Road. So it's sort of the next package, but that's planned to be completed straight behind the roads and that's it.
So I'm just concerned that it does drag out. So if it can come back by the next meeting, that's great. Then I have.
So Karen, you reckon there's enough direction in there for what you need to come back to us in March with a report to purchase and then go to ICM?
Yes, I can see the gaps that have been discussed around the table. Today, my need really was just for an agreement in principle that, again.
Not to purchase, but to go through the due diligence.
That you're comfortable that we spend the money to do this next stage.
Yeah.
It does cost, even if it's just start. So, yeah, I'm comfortable that.
Does it need to say business case and due diligence to consider the matter?
Yeah, I'm
Are you happy?
about whether that's the right word.
I'm just asking, what's the right wording? Because as Warren said, he wants to see it clear and concise to push this forward.
Yeah, I suppose just requesting a business case be considered. Yep, I think business cases be a pathway, document process to.
Well, I hope whoever's the chair of ICM in 2 months' time or 3 months' time, that you're
You'll be reading.
that you'll be the right appropriate, that they're having the right discussion to make sure that the proper business case is coming forward.
So are you specifically wanting the business case to come back to the subcommittee, just so we're clear on? Or are you saying in principle that the next step should be that this goes to greater catchment with the business case?
Well, I think it was bringing it back to this committee. That's what you were meaning by that, wasn't it?
That's what.
We don't actually need the words supporting principle all the way down to where it starts requesting. We just need the Hauraki Scheme Subcommittee requests a business case be considered at the later meetings. And the rest all you've done is table the thing and you've received it. The first one is nothing. The second one, you don't want me to simply accept the business case and it's nothing. Then you will do the whole thing.
Robbie, can I jump in somewhere?
But we suddenly tabled it.
Was it not?
Can I? For me, the purpose of these subcommittees was to involve the landowners and have a comfort of what ICM is doing actually makes sense in a pragmatic and financially sound manner. ICM and council normally receive the business cases, and I'm not sure that's the level of intent or the intent at the subcommittee level is, do the landowners support, do they understand what the rating impact might mean on them? That sort of information I would have expected is what they, like I'm on the other committee on the other side, and I've got land on that side. So those are the sort of information that I would want to know as a landowner to have reassurance. But the actual business case is the responsibility of council before it approves the purchase, etc., and ICM. So whether the business case needs to be done for the subcommittee or whether the nuts and bolts saying this is what's intended, if it stacks up and the rating impact is this, are you happy with it? I might have misread the room, but I think we're getting too much detail for the status of the committee. Now, I don't want to offend anybody, but have I got it wrong? What are we trying to achieve here? Are we getting support from the landowners in principle? If this stacks up, we're happy to go ahead, but maybe we want to know what the cost is going to be.
But no, at the moment, there's no indication of what the rating impact will be. We don't have that information.
No. And that's why that's my concern, is because I've got written down rating impact. So that's the sort of information comes back, but does it need to be a full business case? And are we getting bogged down? Because I don't want to miss the detail for the landowners who are going to be paying for this. So yeah, we could talk about this sort of, and look, my apologies, I've got to go to another council meeting that's come up overnight. So can I leave you with that, and hopefully you get it resolved. Thanks.
Dave, can you just?
There's some sense in what you said, which is exactly what I do at the end of the day of the owner, the happy with what was the best at the end of the day. So what is it you guys actually want us to do in the first place?
Do you want the business case? Do you want to know the rating impacts? Both. There's
a question for you. Do you want to know the business case, or do you want to know the rating impact of what?
Well, I think, the members here are mature enough to read the business case and understand what it is.
It's the same.
And one has to be prepared to go to ICM anyway, so there will be one. Do we want that to be reprocessed and simplified down and the additional effort for that, or are we happy just to accept the business case and say, yeah, we read and understand how it means? So,
and you should say that, doesn't the business case, won't it have the impact of that anyway?
yes.
Isn't that what it is? No one is defining what the business case is, but for this table, one is the rates impact on both shareholder and target. Second is whether the cost is going to be higher for what we are planning to do. Whether Kenny's explanation will stay the same with the dollars. That's what the business case is all about. Anything else is irrelevant for this table.
And
so
we need to know.
It targets your rates. That's the main.
Benefit needs to.
Yes,
We don't have
exactly.
pros and cons.
So, by the time you get your case together, if it's too high for the ratepayers, and at the end of the day, Kenny buying the land doesn't actually do what you say it's going to do, and whatever, then that's all I need to know whether we back it or not. You've got a surprise. Don't come with good business cases on 100,000 higher. So you're covered. The business case covers all of that, from my perspective.
Cool. So does everyone agree with number 2 then, Neil?
And it's probably just the next meeting.
We'll just stop talking over one another. Moment, please.
Can it be at the next meeting rather than at the meeting?
Yeah.
The next meeting is March.
No, the soonest Karen was saying she needs 6 months to complete it.
You need 6 months, Karen.
Well, there's a lot happening in the next 3 months.
So it's March.
As soon as you can.
Well, if you don't meet March, it's August.
Oh, no, you don't know that you'd be,
Yeah, because
that'd be up
yeah.
to the new council to decide.
That's right, and in here, that,
It's not serious.
I can support, I can support the next meeting, knowing full well that it's unlikely to be this side of Christmas.
And so it'll be March.
That was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be meeting in March.
what's this one?
Eh? We need to change. Yeah, next meeting, yeah, just see.
Yeah, I'll move the motion that, this comes back at the next meeting with a little bit of luck. So you, councillor, we've got, we'll bring the meeting closer. So we'll move the motion with the next meeting, considering it's not after March. Make sure that's in there, because otherwise the next meeting, some bright spark that we've got on, go, oh, we don't have the meeting in bloody July, and you'll never get it done.
And Caroline is your only guarantee.
Okay. But yeah, I'm happy with that, making sure that we don't go any further than March time.
Well,
On
second,
the or any paperwork to come back. That's
Yes, we
too
are.
long.
Robin?
no,
Nice.
Peter, second,
Sure.
all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Thanks to again.
Well, you did. And then
Yeah.
Roger Herrick was good to realise what they've been missing. Makes sense. Like,
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, we, so you'll be brief. This one, please.
Who's running, Aaron, are you running the slideshow? Sorry, you have to bring up the big registration.
Oh, yep, sorry, yep.
I'm sorry, Karen.
Right. So now we're up to the, Roger Harris scholarship, so, passes on. The award of the Roger Harris Scholarship of 2025. Background to the Roger Harris Scholarship. Roger Harris was the Chief Executive of the Hauraki Catchment Board from 1959 to 1983. He developed and implemented the Waihau Valley Scheme. So it's John's father, John sitting in the background, who is also an engineer that's worked in the Piako area for many years. So the scholarship was for students whose families reside in the Piako zone and Waihau zone, rating area, and pursue undergrad studies in their engineering and other areas. This year's applicants drew in 10 applicants. Due to the quality and the applicants that were unable to, that were outside the area. Therefore, this year we had we chose 2 applicants because it was difficult to the standard of the 2 applicants was so high. It was difficult for staff, and then it got put over to councillors to choose, and we just decided that the high level of these 2 applicants, it was better to split the Roger Harris Scholarship this year, and it didn't set a precedent because it actually has been done in the past. So it was fortunate that we had 2, but I suppose then the the money for the application got split. So I should stand up. The two applicants this year were Josh Monroe and Natalie Stark. Both have been one had gone to Hamilton, Josh had gone to Hamilton Boys, and Natalie has gone to Hamilton Girls. Studied both at Waikato University. Well done. Josh is in earth science and some geology, and Natalie has been studying civil engineer and at Waikato as well. So I'm not going to present the award this year. John is, because of John's history of his dad and his family's amazing input they've had to this scheme for 70 odd years now. So, and it's actually a privilege that John is still John. He talks about some amazing times that his family had at the dinner table with ex chairs and staff, and John was a child shading in the engineering design of building the stock banks and stuff in his childhood, sitting around the dinner table when the scheme was designed back in the 50s. So I'll sit down now and I'll leave it to John to present these amazing awards and achievements. The only other thing I would like to say before going further is we do have an amazing staff that's won this award in the past, and one of them that we frequently work with is Emily O'Donnell, who received this award about 22 or 25 years ago. So I hope this inspires you to come and work in our great schemes of either the Hauraki Plains or the Waikato catchment in the future. So thank you very much and congratulations. And I'll let John take over, tell you a bit of family history and stuff.
I think you might want to stage it so they get through the photo.
Thank you for the honour of doing this. Yes, it has been a very much family affair. We came up in 1959, and I have an indelible memory because I spent a lot of time out with my father in 1960, which most of you probably would have known. And the Hauraki Plains was about 50 years ago. I can sort of remember behind Karakia, the water gate lapping all of the edges of the windows. And that stuck with my life. The second one was watching the view on the Biako river scheme. Again, back in the very early 60s, going up the Biako in a John boat. You wouldn't have recognised it, it was just about 3 to 3 arch right across. And then coming out of the open where all the drag lines were lying for miles up the river, each with a boat that connected them and digging it out. And some of the biggest eels you have ever seen in your life of that diameter that they pulled up in the drag line buckets and put in the use. So it was really interesting to listen to that. Now you look at the scheme. I'm a roading engineer, but I spend most of my time doing bridges and waterways and things like that. So it didn't go away too far from it. So I'm tired now, but I really appreciate the honour of doing it. The one thing I will say is my father was a very tough taskmaster. He highly respected as you, but he had a crew of engineers and staff that were second to none that produced the whatever it is. And so I have the honour of watching that thing going. My sister and I used to say, coloured them in pieces. We got about 10 bob and 10 AO, and that was pieces. So it's really dear to me. So I wish you all the luck with engineering. So Natalie.
If you lose, continue.
Sorry? Both of you will do.
missed your opportunity, Natalie, because they run it.
Emily, you need to somehow face the camera together, so that, no, the camera's got the camera, so.
Very great. And it's so cool to hear about everything, the engineering, and I just look forward to being able to help out.
Yeah, it's really great for this. Great day.
Well done, boys. If you we just got one more paper to get through. And should we have photos now or we have get photos from them? Okay. And then you can, if you want to stay with so much. It's on.
I think we know big guys. That's right. Look at it.
Problems here. Just
Exciting talk.
You gonna stand up there and move briefing? Yeah, stand up.
It's like once, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Really going? All right, folks, I've got a riveting presentation to finish off the meeting today. This is all about asset depreciation. Some of you may have heard it before. I did speak to, I think it was probably 2 or 3 members from each committee probably a couple of months ago, I think, wasn't it, Robbie? Just about explaining depreciation. Where this came from was quite often we get the question around depreciation, how much it costs, and especially when you look at it over 80 years, when you take into account revaluations and inflation, it gets quite high quite quickly. And so the question was asked, why don't we just borrow the money? Why don't we just use a commercial loan to fund our assets? And therefore, surely it would be cheaper for the ratepayer. So what we put together is a bit of an explanation about actually how do we do depreciation with assets. And what we've done is used an example pump station, which we put in Waikato, Church Lease pump station, and looked at what depreciation looks like for that particular pump station, but also what the commercial loan situation would be. So a couple of things to bear in mind. So a pump station, whilst it's one pump station, it actually involves a whole lot of different components. And I know you guys probably can't read this, and I think we'll send this around, Mr. Chair, that's right. So these are all the different components that make up that one pump station. So you've got the pumps themselves, you've got the civil works, you've got screens, you've got the electronics, you've got flap valves, you've got power supply, you've got all sorts. And they all have different values. And the most important part here is they also have different lives. So some components, whilst we might say we built a pump station the last 80 years, over that 80-year period, you might replace a component 2 or 3 times. It depends on what's the nature of that component. So it's not a sort of a one-off replacement as such. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, is that we do look at that 80-year component. We revalue our assets every 3 years as well. And so for Church Lease, this is the new pump station, so this is what we spent actually constructing it. But every 3 years, we do a complete review of our schemes and we revalue every component. So pump stations, floodgates, stop banks. So we look at unit rates for earthworks. And so these rates slowly increase over time. And the whole point of that is because the point of depreciation is that we're collecting money over time so that when an asset gets into its useful life, we have funding available to replace that asset. In terms of this example here, what we've assumed is 2% every year on the valuation. And that's basically what we see at the moment from some of the economic figures that come out. But it does vary. Our last valuation that we did as part of the 24 long-term plan, gosh, I think our overall asset value went from 640 million to 1.1 billion. And a lot of that was driven by unit rates for stop banks. So that actually came down a lot from where it was originally recommended. But the unit rates simply for shifting earth actually went up quite significantly to what we've seen in the past. What else we got here? So with all of this in mind, we work out what's the condition of our asset and what's the useful life, what's the replacement value, and therefore what do we need to collect in depreciation over the useful life of that asset. And for this particular example, it means that we have to provide 137k a year in depreciation over every year of the asset life in order to sustain its depreciation. Yeah, slide. Is that on? This is an example showing how depreciation does increase. And this is where the example where people have been asking, oh gosh, that's, you know, that cost is obviously going up significantly. This is over an 80-year period. Surely there's a more affordable way to do this through something like a commercial loan. You go to the next slide, Adam. So as I said, every pump station has a whole lot of different components that need to be replaced at different times. And so what this means is that we don't just wait 80 years and collect depreciation over 80 years and replace the asset. This graph shows that over that 80-year period, there is capital investment that's required. Sometimes it's required every 20 years, it might be every 40 years. It does vary depending on the pump station, depending on the asset. And so what this means, if we go to the next slide, is that we effectively have an asset bank account for each one. So for this particular pump station, what you can see here is we start off by investing, and this pump station was about 6 million all up to construct. Over time,
we start to collect depreciation, and that brings the bank account back into, well, towards positive territory. But then we have expenditures needed. So this is expenditure after 20 years. It might be to replace a switchboard or a power supply or something that needs much more regular replacement. And so you can see if you look at this from an asset bank account perspective, we start in the negative, we start to collect it back, we have some expenditure, we continue to collect the money back, we have more expenditure. Over time, we have that sort of up and down with the asset. And so what that means is that that 137K is really to fund all of that work over this entire time, as opposed to just the one-off cost. Because if we think about a commercial loan, we would be effectively borrowing 6 million for the initial investment, and so repaying that 6 million over 20 years. But that would only take care of that initial investment. It doesn't actually take into account all of this interim investment that's needed for a pump station, as an example. So we go to the next slide, Adam. I'll skip that one. Actually, there's a whole lot of assumptions that go into our depreciation calculation, so you can have a read of that in the slides that were sent through. But this is the comparison. So, as I said, with depreciation, we're looking at initially 137,000, and assuming 2% a year, it goes up to 657K over that 80-year period. So, if we look at a loan scenario, which is assuming different interest rates of 5% or 8%, what you can see is that over a 20-year period for a loan, the cost is about 9.5 million. For the higher interest rate, it's in the order of 12 million, but collecting depreciation, it's only 3.5 million. That's over the 20-year lifetime of the, or so 20-year period of the loan. Whereas if you look at an 80-year period with depreciation, that is the total cost, and it does start to stack up. There's no doubting that. But also the cost of replacing the asset does also rise over time. I've left these figures empty as far as that costs over 80 years' time, because if we were to entirely commercially fund our capital program, we'd have the initial funding up front, which is 6 million, and then every time we'd have to do some capital investment, we would need to loan more money, and so that would add to the cost of the overall capital expenditure for this particular asset. So what this demonstrates is that actually, whilst there is a significant cost involved in depreciation, it is actually a lot cheaper for the ratepayer in terms of spreading the cost of that investment over the useful life of the asset, as opposed to squeezing it all into, say, a 20-year period. The whole point of depreciation is to acknowledge that an asset isn't just something that serves the community today, it serves the community for 80 years' time. And so therefore, it's important that the costs of that asset are spread over that lifetime as well. So the community that benefits over that 80-year period does sort of pay for that service. In terms of depreciation itself, we are bound by rules. So as a council, we do have to calculate depreciation. And there's a whole lot of accounting requirements and standards that we have to take account of when we're doing this. Council can make a choice to fund depreciation. And so obviously we have to calculate it, but we can make a choice to fund it. But if we weren't to fund depreciation, we would leave ourselves quite a significant funding hole, because we wouldn't have the funding that we have available now to do the capital program that Karen went through earlier, which is how we fund that work. There is a gap between depreciation and the capital work that we do at the moment, because quite often what we're replacing now is very different to what we're collecting depreciation for, and we bridge that gap through borrowing. What we don't do is double up on the borrowing and depreciation costs. So if we have an asset that required some borrowing, we would address that borrowing up front before switching into the collection and depreciation.
So, excuse me, so that would be for a new asset coming in?
And replacing an asset as well. So Church Lease was a replacement of an asset, and we had some depreciation, but there's some borrowing involved for that one as well.
But just to clarify, so your loan for 5% or loan for 8% is for the 6 million cost plus depreciation.
So that's just for the upfront 6 million cost. So say, for example, if you asked me to fund to build a $6 million pump station, I could go ahead and commercially borrow $6 million.
It would cost 9 million over.
That's right, over a 20-year period. Yeah, as opposed to the approach that we do, which is a combination of depreciation and we do have a bit of borrowing if we've got a gap to bridge.
But with the depreciation column at 3.4 million,
yep.
Where is the actual 6 million to actually build the thing in the first place?
So,
Depreciation's added in on top of.
so if we jump back, 1 or 2 slides. Oh, back one, so forward one, sorry. Yep. So this is the first, so in terms of building the asset, we use the depreciation that we collect over time, and also borrowing to provide that initial investment. And then we recover that slowly over time with depreciation we collect.
So your 137 is accumulated over time until you get your 6 million.
That's correct. So here we actually get back to 0 at this point, and that's how it should be. So and at that point, we then decide, okay, so what do we do with the asset? Obviously, in 80 years' time, be a very different environment. Today's environment is very different to 50 years ago as well. But what you'll see here is this big expenditure here is actually the civil works. So that's your structure coming to the end of its useful life. If we were to spend that amount of money there, we'd have to think very carefully, because obviously we are getting to the end of its useful life, and to think about what other investment might we need to do in order to sustain that asset sort of way out into this period of time. And that's why we use things like the sustainable infrastructure decision-making framework, because we do have to have a careful think about what we invest in. An investment now in infrastructure is a commitment for a long period of time for our communities, so we do need to make sure it's the right decision going forward. All right, so as I said, it's this was something just to try and explain how we do calculate depreciation and compare to just simply actually borrowing. And I think what it's shown is that there is certainly a benefit to the ratepayer in terms of spreading that cost over the asset life. But I'll get a copy of these slides out here so you can have a read. If you've got any questions, do give me a shout. I won't hold up. I'll jump through. Well, I'm not sure if lunch has arrived yet.
Just appreciation, I know, Peter and Roger were sat through many a meeting trying to understand depreciation in the past. Yeah, right, Roger? Yes. And if you go away and actually have a good read through that, you'll actually start understanding a simplified process finally that you can understand.
Yeah, the terminology has changed.
Depreciation is actually a debatable term as well, because we don't. So in a private sense, depreciation is used against assets and it has tax implications against your income and things, whereas that's not the case here. This is more about covering the cost of an asset over its useful life. And I think there was a term that used to be used maybe 20, 30 years ago.
The other day when we were at a meeting.
Yeah, I can't remember what that term was. Something about the useful life of an asset and spreading the funding over that useful life rather than the here and now funding in its entirety.
Then they hit this one.
They might be there. Yeah, it could be that actually.
What was that?
This decline in service fatigue.
There's been different terms used over time.
Years ago.
But under the accountancy standards, it's we have to call it depreciation. So yeah, it is a big part of what we do as council. We have a capital program of the order of 15 to 20 million a year, which gets funded through depreciation. Well, it's big stuff and small stuff.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, I think Peter, did you?
Yeah, the 2% on the inflated value, so 6 million plus 2%, and the next 2% is on that new value.
Well, so we
Is that right?
we
That's
only
what
revalue. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but we only revalue every 3 years. If there is indication that the value, and I think the valuation might change by more than 10%. Yeah, but other than that, we just do it every 3 years with the long-term plan. And the 2% is just based on some of the economist values that come through at the moment. Yeah, questions?
I know there's not many of us listening, but definitely go and read it. And if you've got any questions, come back to Greg or Adam or myself, because it's when we got presented this 4 months ago now, maybe myself and Noel and
a couple months,
3 or 4 months ago, we finally said now we've got a way of explaining it to the public how actually this model works. That's that people can understand. And if actually go back a slide, a couple of slides, to the 2% inflation model, and you go, oh, that looks scary. But if you actually put, if income isn't growing at 2% inflation, then it's negative anyway. So that's one thing positive about it.
And I said the conversations come about from looking at a project and landowners saying, well, hang on a sec, this is going to be escalating like this. Why on earth don't we just commercially borrow the money? And so this is in place just to demonstrate why do we take this approach?
But you're only borrowing money for 20 to 25 years versus 80 years, and that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, it's that, and it's also spreading all the capital investment over the life of the asset, not just the one-off.
And costs are different between industries.
It's
And you're borrowing from the other depreciations that you've got from other projects. You perhaps didn't explain that.
Yes, that's
It's a good idea.
Cool, thank you, Greg. So no other questions. Well, so yeah, thank everyone for their attendance. Hopefully there'll be some lunch happening soon. And Adam, do you want to finish with a Karakia and I'll close the meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ina here, mai kia uru, kapu nui. Kia wākia, kia mama, kia nākau, kia nāna, ina nāro, kia te ara, hakaturi. Ko rā, kia rongo, kia whakahiria, ake, kia wanga, kia tēnā, Huie, tai kia.
Thank you for your attendance and the 21. Thank you. And close the meeting.
Now the meeting's closed, I just wanted to say something.